I'm joined this afternoon eventually by Councilors Janey and Wu, but we are joined right now by Council President Andrea Campbell. I'd like to remind everyone this is a public hearing being recorded and will be rebroadcast on Comcast, often on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, as well as online. I ask that you please silence your cell phones and other devices. If you wish to publicly testify, please check the box when you sign in at the front door. Hello, Councilor Wu. When it is time for public testimony, I ask that you please state your name and affiliation or residence, and that you limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all concerns and comments are heard. This is a hearing for Docket 0194 in order for a hearing regarding the admissions policy and funding changes for Madison Park Technical, Vocational High School, and improving partnerships. Last year, we held multiple dialogues where we heard feedback from students, faculty, advocates, union reps, and more. Through the recommendations resulting from these conversations, we have narrowed down our focus here on the Council to tackle two main topics at today's hearing: the admissions policy and increasing funding. There is certainly more than just these two issues, but these are areas where my colleagues and I believe we can make the greatest impact. Every vocational technical school has an admissions policy, but Madison does not. We know that there has been a public demand for the implementation of one, but there has been no real progress towards it. Funding. We know that the way that Madison is currently being funded does not work. I'd like us, and we know that, and we'll learn more about it over the next few weeks as we start our city's budget process, in particular education funding here in the city of Boston. I think it's important for us to work together to figure out ways to better provide for our only vocational technical school in Boston, and make sure that it is given the appropriate funding and resources that our kids and our students at that school need and deserve. I hope that this year, along with the support of our colleagues and collaboration with the administration, we are able to make real progress for Madison Park Technical Vocational High School and our students. If my colleagues would allow me to just let Lou give his public testimony, because he has a prior commitment, needs to leave. Lou's been a big part of this work to date and prior to even our arrival here on the Council. So Lou, I'm going to have you give your testimony, then we'll return to opening comments from my colleagues and then to our panel. Okay. Welcome, Lou.
Thank you for taking me out of turn, and thank you for your leadership on so many education issues, Councilor George, and thanks Councilor Janey and Councilor Wu. I know you've been at the other hearings on Madison Park, and thanks Councilor Campbell for your leadership. I'm Lou Finfer with the Massachusetts Communities Action Network. I live in Dorchester, and we are also one of the co-chairs of the Alliance for Vocational Technical Education that Kevin McCaskill is a member of as well, that includes educators, business groups, and community groups. We actually discovered the issue of waiting lists in the vocational technical high schools across the state. In the gateway cities, there are substantial waiting lists totaling over 3,000 students. And in the testimony I left with Councilor Essaibi-George has a list of some of the places. And there's a great contrast with Madison Park because of the history of, I would say, lack of support. And this goes back many decades and decades, several decades. The lack of support from BPS has led to there are 500 vacancies in Madison Park. There's progress being made by Kevin McCaskill that's encouraging, but there's still 500 vacancies at a time when all these other vocational schools and gateway cities have substantial waiting lists. And that's not a good contrast. And it also means that those students year after year after year who are not in those seats that are empty cannot get good paying jobs that they could get if they graduated from Madison Park High School. So that's a big issue, and it needs to be tackled, and people are trying to tackle pieces of it, but it needs support. The 4 areas that I think Madison Park could get help with support. I think Headmaster Superintendent Kevin McCaskill would know the areas of curriculum support and the resources of BPS. He could, say what he thinks might be helpful if there are things, I'm sure. So I'll leave that to him. In terms of Mayor Walsh and with the support of the councilors, I think there are partnerships that could help Madison. Madison recently signed a partnership agreement with Boston Medical Center, but we're home to Partners Healthcare, the largest employer in the state, and Beth Israel Leahy. And I think Mayor Walsh and the council could help in engaging them to be partners with Madison Park. Also in the area of construction, Suffolk Construction has indicated interest, and Wentworth Institute, you'll hear from, is interested in construction, both construction and building trades, but also a construction management career path that's really kind of sitting out there to do, and there's interest of all the institutions. It just needs further support from the mayor, from BPS, and the council. The other thing is the outreach. In order to fill those vacancies, even though outreach is being done by Superintendent McCaskill, in the real world of students have to make this decision in 8th grade, so there really needs to be a dedicated interracial outreach team to be out there meeting with parents, students, guidance counselors, where they live, where they go to church, and where they go to community settings, to let them know about the option of Madison. Countless parents and students are not going to know about, they have this big application from BPS, they have all these choices, they're not going to really know what Madison is and what a difference. If you don't go to college, it's not, we hope people want to go out to college, but it's not for everyone. It costs a lot. But if you graduate from Madison, you're going to get a job earning $45,000, $50,000 plus a year. And if you graduate from most other Boston district high schools and do not go further, you're going to be stuck in a $25,000 a year job. So that's why we want that help in recruitment. And the last area is the Build BPS. Madison should be formally and named incorporated into that for substantial renovations they need. And also there should be some kind of consideration to at least the question of planning and researching, does there need to be a whole new facility for Madison built in this day and age? So that's what I wanted to say, and you'll hear from people who know more than me, and it's very kind of you to take me out of turn. I have to catch a plane, so that's why I have to leave early. Thank you very much, Councilor Essaibi-George.
Lou, thank you very much. Councilor Campbell, you've got opening remarks.
I'll just be brief, just to thank you as well as Councilor Janey and Councilor Wu for your continued leadership on these issues. Look forward to reviewing probably most of the tape because I have several conflicts, but thank you for your leadership. Thank you to BPS for being here, and Kevin for your leadership at the school and your entire staff. Your passion is contagious, and you're truly inspirational. So look forward to partnering and supporting you guys in any way I can. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Councilor Wu?
Thank you very much. It's been just really inspiring to partner with the two of you, and to now I feel like we're partners. We've been at this for a little while, visiting and understanding all the different angles. I remain convinced that there is no more important charge than making sure that our students have a direct connection and pipeline to the opportunities that are here in a way that is equitable, and Madison Park has all the pieces. We just need to put the supports in place and take these small steps that the chair has summarized and that we've started to identify through the process of our work. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor Janey?
Thank you so much. I just want to open first by just saying how grateful I am for the partnership of my colleagues, Councilor Essaibi-George and Councilor Wu. We have been at this for almost a year and a half now, working together to support and strengthen Madison, from the tours to the policy briefing last year to the hearing on partnerships, to working closely to hear what students had to say, what parents had to say, what educators at Madison had to say, what the administration had to say, what the Friends Group had to say. What is very clear to me is the deep commitment of you, Mr. McCaskill, you and your team, certainly all of the folks who care about Madison. I am pleased and proud to continue to lift this up as someone who lives very close to Madison, close proximity to Madison, and has seen so much development in Dudley Square. It has always been heartbreaking to me to see this, what I considered a missed opportunity in terms of really engaging our young people in a meaningful way that allows them the opportunity to have real partnerships, to build real skills and earn some money, which is so important for our young people. What is also clear to me is the importance that we talk about Madison in a different way. It is frustrating to hear people, including those who care about Madison, continue to talk about what is not working at Madison when I have been to Madison now, I don't know how many times, as an elected official, and every time I go, I am blown away by what I see in the classrooms and also what is on display from our young people. And that is in large part to you and your leadership, Mr. McCaskill, and the dedication that we all see. But it's going to be very difficult to convince people that something new and wonderful is going on if we keep highlighting what is wrong with Madison. So I want us to be a little more intentional and conscious about the language that we use when we talk about Madison, and that there are wonderful things happening. Doesn't mean that all of our work is done. Clearly, there's more work to do. We're all here to support that work. The other piece around our language is, saying things like college is not for everyone. It makes Madison sound like a fallback position. Madison should be a clear, wonderful choice that anyone should make who wants to get into either the trades, whether it's the building trades or some other sort of vocation. It is very important. We shouldn't be treating it as if this is a plan B for kids who can't make it in college. And so I think my commitment is clear. I am here for the long haul. There are some immediate things that I'd like to see happen. We're here to discuss the admissions policy. I'd love to see some funding, a different kind of funding formula, but also Madison to be thought about in terms of Build PPS. I know many of us have expressed frustration about how Madison wasn't included in that. I am looking forward to having a wonderful, productive conversation that gets us closer to meeting our shared goals to ensure that our children, our young people, our students at Madison Park have every opportunity to succeed. So thank you for your partnership and for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership and all the work that you do, and looking forward to a great productive hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Flynn, opening remarks.
Thank you, Councilor Essaibi-George, and to Councilor Janey and Councilor Wu for your leadership on making sure that the students at Madison Park receive the best possible education. I also want to highlight the great work of Mr. McCaskill, the Mayor's Office, and BPS. And I agree with Councilor Janey. Madison Park is a wonderful school, and in the city we often hear negative things that are going on, but I agree with Councilor Janey. We have to start promoting our schools and talking about what's happening or what's going well in these schools, because there's a lot of great things that are happening. Unfortunately, we do focus on some of the negative aspects of different issues, but highlighting the important role Madison plays in our community, developing positive partnerships with our building trades, with our businesses, making sure that our young people that go to Madison Park have the access to the booming Boston economy. We see the South Boston waterfront. They're constantly building beautiful buildings there, but the economy is only doing well if our young people benefit from it, and that includes our young people from Madison Park. And I have great hope for the school, and I know its best days are yet to come, and we have great leadership at Madison Park. And just want to say thank you to Mr. McCaskill and to BPS for your leadership and never giving up on the young people at Madison Park. So I'm honored to help any way I possibly can. And if it's not in Build BPS, maybe it's up to the City Council to figure out another revenue stream on how we can support Madison Park. It's that important. Maybe the Boston City Council has to look at other ways of working with our business community to ask them to get more involved in being a better partner with Madison Park. Maybe we have to increase taxes in the city or look for different revenue options so that we can be a strong supporter of Madison Park. So it's a citywide school. It benefits so many young people, and I think we need to look at different revenue streams, including potentially raising taxes so our young kids get the best possible education they deserve. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn, and Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the makers and yourself for this incredible work. I think it's more important that we hear from the administration and even more importantly some students that we're going to hear from later. It goes without saying that I am a huge supporter of Madison Park Technical Vocational High School, excited about the progress that has been made, but know I stand with all of us, every single person in this room, that there's more we can be doing. I'm looking forward to hearing more on sort of programming options and want to again reiterate my call as we had at the last hearing and we've said in subsequent hearings and meetings on this that I really hope we don't lose focus of the so-called green collar and the new economy, green economy, sustainability, new renewable energy sources, a great preparation for something that's not only vitally important but also is the fastest growing sector and produces some really, really important and well-paying jobs. So looking forward to continuing our partnership. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Thank you to our panel who is here. I'm not sure who's going to start, but we are joined by the headmaster of Madison Park Technical Vocational High School, and whoever would like to start, you're welcome to it, and thank you for being here.
Oh, first and foremost, thank you for the honor of being in front of you today, Councilors Janey, Essaibi-George, and Ms. Wu. As the Executive Director of Madison Park, I'm always proud to sit at any table, any seat, in any forum to talk about our school. But I know we've got not too much time. But there's just just to echo the words of Ms. Janey, there's such great work going on. But we do not underestimate the work that still needs to be done. There is great work to be done, but I love the tone of what everyone is setting now, that changing that narrative, that it does not have to be the 20-year narrative of Madison Park, of what has gone wrong, who did not support Madison Park, who was responsible for it. The time is now to say this is what's going on and how do we progress forward. And this type of progressive thinking in this room is just the impetus that we need to really make this the greatest educational experience that Boston has ever seen, and we are truly committed to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Start? First start?
Let me make sure. Is that PowerPoint? No, is the PowerPoint up?
Can you go to the program overview?
Now, you know me in technology. Don't
Give us a quick minute. We'll make sure that gets up so we can
Here it is.
follow along with you.
Yep, thank you. Up, this one, at the top, this side. Yes, so where is it?
Select the lens on the camera.
Maybe we can get our radio and TV production folks down here.
I will say, while Kerry is working his magic to bring that up, you remind me of something that I'd like to point out. We are planning a citywide Needle Take Back Day here in the city of Boston, and the students in your graphics department printed up all of the folders and the flyers and the posters that will be handed out at all of our community health centers. So it was really exciting to pick up those that material from your kids, and I got to meet them, and they did a great job with our materials. So
Thank you for utilizing our services.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
So, yeah, before we get started, if we can have folks here on the panel to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Silverian, the Executive Director of Career and Technical Education for Boston Public Schools.
Sam DePine, Operational Superintendent for the high schools.
Shira Dukovnik, Director of Turnaround and Transformation for BPS.
David Bloom, Budget Director for BPS.
Welcome all. Thank you, Michelle, and you'll lead us through this PowerPoint.
So just a simple program overview. As everyone in the room knows, Madison Park is Boston's only career vocational technical education high school, serving students in grades 9 through 12 and servicing every neighborhood. I want to put the emphasis on every neighborhood here in the city of Boston as a city-wide draw. We have 19 programs of study ranging from the heavy trade areas, construction trade areas, to transportation, to technology, to service areas, as well as hospitality. And we are also pending with one program coming up, and that is the HVACR, which we should know within the next couple of months. And for the agenda, there are 4 components to the agenda, and we'll roll through them with enrollment, with 2 parts of student populations and admissions process, funding, in which we'll hear from Mr. David Bloom from Central Office, the facility, in which Mr. Sam DePina will outline, and performance, or Mr. Kovnick will outline as well. So with enrollment, this graph is very unique. As you look at the graph, is a 15-year graph from 2004 to 2018. You'll notice there's been a 44% decrease in enrollment over 15 years at Madison Park. But if you take notice from 2016 to 2018, there's an uptick. And so we have seen a 1-year increase of 4 students from 2016 to 2017, but also this year we had an increase of 50. The projection for Madison Park this upcoming year of 2019-2020 is over 1,000 students. So the efforts of a lot of folks has really been paying off, and we are really looking at getting a school in which 1,500 deserving individual students and families will be represented in that school. So the admissions process, and if we start from the 3rd bullet, it's, I want to, well, first and foremost, there is regulations that state that all vocational schools in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts must have an admissions policy. The admissions policy was presented to the school committee in September of 2015 and also in October of 2015, and it has been tabled since that time. So we are looking at how do we get this back in the docket and get it back in the queue in order for us to really look at a policy that has already been vetted by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and simply needs approval from the City of Boston School Committee. And so we are looking forward to, again, going forward with the school committee, presenting the policy as is, and having them make a determination on the policy. But currently, Madison Park now accepts students in grades from freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. And it's through the district's standard assignment process. So students who simply would say they want Madison Park as their #1 choice, they get their choice to come to Madison Park. Students who select a 2nd or 3rd, if they do not get their original choice, their first choice, they would fall back into their 2nd choice, and vice versa, with Madison Park being their 2nd choice. We do take on transfer students, not only from other vocational schools who have a right to transition without pause into a vocational program at Madison Park due to the nature of the school, but we also take transfers from other high schools, and we can only take them up until their junior year, seeing that you need 2 consecutive years in a vocational area in order to earn a credential. So we have been very successful in transfer students being successful at Madison Park. And again, it's a different approach. It's not sitting behind a desk for 180 days. It is simply on the Dewey method, which is doing. Students enjoy getting up, doing, producing, and making sure that they understand that this is all done for their futures. Very interesting, the enrollment. The enrollment, and this goes with the selection process. If you notice what they have done with 17, 18, all the way straight through, I always look at the numbers that are in parentheses. And for example, we have 249 students in school year 17, 18 selected Madison as a choice. It went up to 295 for this current year. But if you look at what has occurred in 2019, 2020, 407 students selecting Madison Park, either 1, 2, or 3, but looking at that number of 344 students getting into the school. This means the school is doing something constructive, and it is touching the hearts of not only students, because we know 14-year-olds do not make the selection for themselves. We are tapping into the heartstrings of parents that this method of schooling works. And I want to repeat that. This method of schooling works. And this is not just something that's temporary. This is a trend that will continue on if we follow suit of what we say we intend to do to support this school. So at this time, I will pass my time over to Mr. Bloom for funding.
Good afternoon, counselors. I'm going to walk briefly through the Madison Park budget proposed for next year that was approved by school committee, and some additional analysis we've been able to do of that budget that was presented to school committee for all schools, but I'm highlighting here for Madison Park in particular, as that is the focus of today's hearing. As many on the council are aware, our primary method of funding schools is a mechanism called weighted student funding. This mechanism includes a weight, special for students in vocational programs, which applies to every student at Madison Park. And that weight is just shy of $4,300 on top of any other weights that they may get. The net result of this is that the average student at Madison Park gets weighted student funding of $14,424 for a total projected for next year of just shy of 14 million, 13,800,000. There are also additional school allocations to the school beyond weighted student funding. So there's funding on grants such as Title I, as well as things like nursing support, COAST support, and other supplemental funding that the school gets on top of their weighted student funding. This includes support for partnerships such as RocksMap and other technical programs. The new information that we're able to put together for schools this year has to do with our central budget and how that is allocated out to schools. So there are two new categories here that are centrally funded school supports and central administration costs. These costs are helpful to look at because they represent an estimate, though not perfect, of the district's full financial commitment to all schools in our district. In this case, we're focused on Madison Park. With those costs included, we're up to a total of close to $30 million of the district's funding going towards Madison Park, which comes in just short of $31,800 per pupil. The main drivers of this centrally funded school supports include things like benefits costs, transportation, special education supports, and other supports and services, for example, offered through Michelle's office and other offices centrally. One other quick thing to note on the next slide, I mentioned that some other school allocations the school gets. One of the main sources of those allocations are federal and state grants. Over the past 3 years, including the current year, Madison Park has been getting a school redesign grant from the state of about $500,000 a year, a little bit more than that. The district is committed to continuing to fund that school redesign grant ongoing, as we do with any school that has been labeled turnaround by the state. When that has been lifted, that grant, the support for that grant will slowly fade away. And our hope is that the continued expansion of enrollment at the school will provide additional funding that will eventually replace that school redesign grant that the state has taken away starting for next year. One other reason on the next slide, I just wanted to note that we talked about central supports as well. If we wanted to compare to other regional vocational schools, we need to look at the full costs of providing supports to the school. Regional vocational technical schools in Massachusetts are their own school districts and are providing all costs, including benefits and transportation and other special education supports. We are proud that our support for Madison Park puts us among the higher funded regional vocational technical schools if Madison Park were to be one across the country. Now I will note, and I labeled this on the chart, but in case anybody can't see it, our comparison of state data is only for school year 17. We did not try and place Madison Park in this document, nor are we making a direct comparison because there are a couple years of difference. But we will say we do compare favorably to the higher funded end of this chart, as we should. We are not suggesting that by any means that we should be anywhere besides the top end of funding. If you scroll forward, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to talk about Perkins Grant.
So we wanted to share that in addition to the previous grant slide that you saw, there are additional funds from the federal Perkins Grant. We've been very intentional about increasing the yearly allocations that go, for the most part, to the pathway program budgets. And so you can see that in the most recent fiscal year 19, we had an allocation which for the majority is equipment grant, over $600,000. Additionally, we have about $100,000 in contracts in which we support Madison with things like consultants for our skills library that captures all of our standards and credentialing data, certification and credentialing software, such as Adobe software and OSHA software. So there are additional supports that are not part of those allocations that you see in that slide as well. And then I've also pulled out some of the major investments we have made into program areas where the investment over the last 2 years has been $50,000 or more. These are pathways that we really wanted to have an infusion of funds to bring the equipment up to speed in industry standards. So as an example, you can see our commitment to graphic communications, where we've brought in some new printing equipment, which has enabled the instructor to get the new business up and running, the print shop that she has done a wonderful job launching this year. Metal fabrication, we have had additional allocations to bring in some large pieces of equipment that was needed in that shop as well. Auto collision. So those were some of our larger investments that we've done in the last couple of years, as well as instructional technology, which I always feel is very important that our CTE teachers have an adequate instructional technology to make sure that they're able to teach the knowledge and skills in their classroom. So there's been a big infusion of computers as well as projectors and other types of instructional technology. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin, who was going to talk about partnerships.
So as you see on the graph, well over 50, and I think that's being very conservative, and the range of partnerships range from our heavy trade areas, and as I alluded to in our last conversation that we had in front of the City Council, IBEW 103, New England Carpenters, and IUPAT, the Painters and Allied Trades, TC 35, just outstanding partners for our trade areas. And when we look at also the recent signing of Boston, the Boston Medical Center coming on board, we look at the RoxMap partners, our post-secondary partners, especially Bunker Hill Community College and Benjamin Franklin, who have just gone off the charts with what they offer to our students, in a fledgling program with Wentworth, again, which is going to be very promising, as well as Roxbury Community College. And so when we look at what we have to offer, what we are offering, our partners offer us their expertise. And when we say 50 is very conservative, it does not include our advisory committees that are part of all 19 of our programs. Every single, as we said in our last meeting, every single program, all 19, have advisory committees, and they meet twice a year. In some cases, they meet 4 to 5 times a year. And these advisory board committees really run the show. And what I mean by that, they are utilizing what it's going to take for our students to work in their industry. What does the curriculum look like? What does the equipment what equipment is needed to really have these students prepared the moment that they walk across the stage. And Councilor Janey, you indicated that Madison Park should never be a fallback because of, you don't have to go to college. Well, see, our students, one of the things we say, and this is coming from our advisory boards, our students probably make the most informed decision of any student, any high school student in the city of Boston, because they get an option. They get an option to go on to post-secondary education, or if they feel post-secondary education is 4 to 5 years down the road, they can work within their program of study. And that is very unique to only Madison Park. And our advisory committees are very they're crucial, critical partners in providing those opportunities. But our partnerships are ever increasing. We could always use more, but again, it's the quality. And I want to put the emphasis on the quality of the partnerships. It's great to have some partners, and some partners had to be removed from Madison Park. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because again, it's just not a matter of putting your name on a roll and getting 2 free meals for the year at the advisory dinners. So we really look for some really robust partnerships that are really going to come in and share their expertise, share opportunities, and most importantly, be a critical partner in the development of not only our students, but our school as well. And we do have the partner engagement team, which is led by our Director of Strategic Partnerships and Engagement, and that is Ms. Brandy Cruthert, who has been very instrumental in getting the additional 400 incoming freshmen for next year. Also, we mentioned RocksMap, and in our last meeting, we mentioned it is probably the fastest growing program that we have in the school. Over the last 4 years, we've seen an over 700% increase in the number of dual enrollment credits that have been obtained by our students. That is a massive number in a short period of time. And RocksMap, and I know for folks who know the origins of RocksMap, you're shaking your head and saying, yeah, we remember the origins, but this is the new improved RocksMap. And I tell you, Mr. Tanika DeGrace has been a driving force in really pushing probably going to be one of the best programs in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And also for Co-op is a program in which students get the opportunity during their vocational week to go out and work. Some of our students ranges from $12 to $20 an hour to go to work instead of coming to school. Outstanding incentive, and it's a program of study in which I think we do have to have some work to improve upon our numbers. And again, a great partner with the Boston PIC. So with that, I will turn the program over to Sam DePina.
Good evening once again. Before I get started, I just want to say, publicly thank the Madison Park previous and current administration for their work they do with kids. I have a personal investment in Madison Park in the sense that I've had a brother who graduated and a brother who dropped out of the Madison Park, and I've been in the district many years and also saw the development and growth of the school. So I just want to publicly thank folks at Madison Park for their support and their continued effort to support our kids in the city. Before I get into the slide, I just want to kind of highlight, Bill BPS has 5 different working components, so just to remind everyone. The first is new builds and expansions. The second is real estate management. The third is renovations and reconfigurations. Then there are district-wide investments. And then lastly, capital repairs. When we talk about capital repairs in the context of Bill BPS, we take all of our buildings into consideration and discuss what capital repairs are needed in those repairs. Through those Bill BPS conversations, Madison Park is definitely at the forefront in on the agenda for investments. And what you see here in front of you is a slide that kind of represents both capital projects and repairs, as well as day-to-day maintenance and repair costs. At the top part of the slide, you see a work order number per year from FY17 through FY19. And as you see, there are about 681 total for those 3 years that were worked on and completed. Repair costs, you're talking things like pipe bursts, you're talking about different repairs in those day-to-day issues. Maintenance costs, you're talking trash bags, you're talking cleaning products, those kind of things to help maintain the school day-to-day. And as you see, we spend total in those areas about $1.62 million from FY17 through FY19. Getting down to the capital projects. So in FY17, we invested a little over $2 million in the welding shop. As recently as FY19, they received a large sum of 21st century furniture. In FY19 as well, we're talking about building out locker rooms to help support both Madison Park as well as the O'Brien School as well. We're embarking on a roof project recently, and we're also involved in a switchgear replacement as well. In what's noted there in the last bullet is electrical distribution that's submitted as a capital repair project, but that has not been fully committed as of yet. So that's in the queue to become available. So in total, over the years FY17 through now, we're looking at a capital investment of approximately a little over $19 million. So I just wanted to paint that picture. Thank you.
And finally, I'm going to share a little bit of context about the school's status as a turnaround school to give you a heads up on where we've been and where we think Madison Park might be going from here. So the diagram that you're seeing there is very general to any school that received a designation of level 4 anytime in the last 6 years or so. And the way that process works is the school would have received a designation in the school year 15-16 and had a year working between a group of local stakeholders, the school leadership team, and the district to develop a comprehensive turnaround plan. The way the state accountability system works is that the school then has 3 years to implement that plan with the district, and it almost doesn't matter whether there are dramatic and immediate changes or the school makes slow progress. That 3-year window stays the same no matter what. And it's only at the end of that 3-year window where Madison is coming here at the end of this school year 18-19 that there's a decision point on behalf of the state, and that decision rests with the state, with the Commissioner of Elementary and Secondary Education. There are 3 options for what happens when a school reaches the end of the 3 years of their initial turnaround plan. The first option is that the commissioner could decide to exit a school like Madison Park from that status, could ask the school to take another 1 or 2 years, refine their plan, and have additional time to implement it. I'll talk a little bit about why we think that's the likely option here. And of course, there's always the possibility that the commissioner could use a designation used to be known as level 5. They now use the term chronically underperforming. What's at the bottom of that slide is how the district has been a part of the process of supporting the development and implementation of the turnaround plan. As you know, the work of a school goes far beyond facilities and budgets. It's about what happens with the work in the adults in the building and in the district. So there was a lot of work up front to try and put in place a plan that represented the aspirations of the school community and an academic program that would serve the students in that blended CTVE academic environment. Since then, they've received support from things like technical assistance, acceleration academies where we invite students in to make up coursework or do additional learning over February and sometimes April vacation. We've also been working with the school to deploy things like a data inquiry residency and an academic response team to provide coaching to teachers in the school as they build their capacity to do this very important work. That has been ongoing for the 3 years, and we anticipate continuing that support and identifying what that support needs to look like in partnership with the school leadership team, no matter what the future of the school looks like. So as I said, we think that it's likely that we will be in a position to make adjustments to the turnaround plan in consultation with stakeholders. The accountability system in Massachusetts has changed since Madison Park received a designation, but the fact remains that we have not yet seen the kind of growth on MCAS that we think is consistent with a decision to exit a school from turnaround. And I know we've talked about everyone here feels that there's more work to do, and certainly MCAS is only one measure of what progress on that looks like. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that there are other indicators where we're starting to see success on some of the measurable annual goals that the state holds the district and the school accountable for. One definite bright spot is the increase in 4-year adjusted graduation rate to over 75%. It's the highest it's been in more than 5 years, I believe, as well as seeing improvements in student growth. This is what we would expect sometimes before you see changes in the overall MCAS score, that the amount of growth that students are making over the course of the year is more along the lines of what we would want to see in that range between 40 and 60 and above. And in this past year, both ELA and MCAS performance on average among 10th graders was in that range.
So with next steps, you know, as Shira alluded to with the turnaround, definitely do an assessment of where we are right now and the determination for the opportunity. And I really agree with Shira's assessment, is looking at the state, looking at 2 more years. I think 2 more years with the revision of some of the tenants that are located in our turnaround plan to make some tweaks to really ramp up the improvement of the performance in our students. Instructional support, and I want to reach out to our current principal, Ms. Brett Dickens, who's over there in that red blazer over there. But she has done a tremendous job in really improving the instructional practices and strategies within our school. And she has brought something to the table that I think had not been there in my previous 2 years. And again, making sure that we get everybody on board, not only her, myself, but the administrative team, as well as the teachers, but also students and their parents, paraprofessionals, making sure that we are all on the same page and moving the instructional pieces together in a coherent manner that will produce the outcomes that we so desperately need. But again, utilizing Mass Insight, which is for our AP, but most importantly, utilizing our partners who are in post-secondary as well as our vocational partners who can really do, I really think, really can do some outstanding work in enforcing what are those things, and from a mathematics, from an English language arts perspective, from an industry perspective, that can really excite students and really pique their curiosity and move them forward. From a finance, Dave, we are looking for some money. Dave, we look for some money. I mean, and I can appreciate, you know, with the increases in Perkins, we can increase with the enrollment increases, but the truth be told, we are in a building that is built in 1975 that is antiquated. And this also goes with the facilities as well. And when we look at the funding method, it's similar to what they're doing with the Chapter 70 funds right now in the state. Looking at those equations and those algorithms, say, do they work in the 21st century in 2019? And I think we really have to do an assessment. Are the current funding methods in the best interest of Madison Park? We cannot look at East Boston High School, we cannot look at Boston Latin School or what they do at BAA. We are only concerned with what happens at Madison Park. If we are truly the driver and the impetus of workforce development for our young people, then something has to be different. And I know that we have the folks in this room to really do a fair and equitable, make a fair and equitable process going forward. And from a vocational perspective, when we have our gold standard students getting the credentials that they need from a currently, but also moving to a system in which we are looking at how do we prepare students for the emerging industries that are happening right before our very eyes in Boston, but most importantly, to continue to have students be aptly prepared to enter into 2 4-year and technical schools without any remediation, but most importantly, have the opportunity to walk into an entry-level position, making a working wage in which they can actually live here in the city of Boston. And as far as facilities, Sam?
Sure. So we'll be reviewing the NEASC recommendations as part of our team that we have central office in collaboration with the school and partners to review the recommendations and be prepared to submit updates at the 2-year mark and 5-year mark of the reports that are due for NEASC. So we'll be working closely with the school on those reports. All right, and that concludes our presentation, so we'll open up for questions if you.
Thank you all for that very detailed presentation. I'm just going to get to my timer so I hold myself accountable. My first comment and a great deal of applause. Mr. DePina, you mentioned that Madison Park will be at the forefront when we talk about funding and Build BPS. So I look forward to seeing that, because some of my work through Build BPS, I haven't seen that. I've articulated that to the school committee. I've articulated that to the school department. Madison has not been a part of the conversation when we've talked about Build BPS. So I think over the course of the next few weeks, I'll circle back with the Build BPS folks to make sure that is the case. I'm excited about that. One of the driving factors in any of the decisions we make is funding. I mean, if we can have great policies, but if the dollars aren't following it, it's not going to happen. So I'm starting with some of my notes on slide 10 and looking at the breakdown here, which is thoughtful. I think it's interesting that we've incorporated some of the centrally funded items. That's fine. But what I don't see separated out is the Chapter 74 funding that's particular to vocational technical ed. Where is that embedded in these dollars?
Funding associated with Chapter 74 is included as a part of the state funding formula that determines how much state funding we get. It's a part of the Chapter 70 formula.
But 74 is particular to vocational technical ed.
It is.
So how much of what we get as a city is being directed towards Madison Park? Because I understand it's redistributed to any of our CTE programs across the district.
We don't get individualized Chapter 74 funding. So when we have new programs go Chapter 74, we don't get any additional funding from the state. It's an area, when we think about the decrease in state funding and the impact that that's had on BPS, there is no sort of additional Chapter 74 funding. It is subject to the same treatment that the rest of our Chapter 70 funding is.
So do we get specific funds from the state for vocational technical education?
We get Perkins, which comes through the state, I believe, but we do not get.
We don't get separate dollars from the state at all
No.
for vocational technical education? Okay, you are in the budget office, so you'd understand that more.
I'll look it back up again.
Perhaps we can follow up. We can
Yeah,
follow up
I'll look it back up again.
offline.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Perkins Grant allocations, which are page 13 and 14, are these grants that are outlined here all towards Madison, or are they broken up into the other school programs as well in other schools?
What you're seeing here is just Madison Park's allocation. So there are Perkins funds that are available for all CTE school programs in the district, but this is just Madison's portion of that funding.
Great, and then what are we anticipating for FY20?
It's hard to say. There are more programs coming online in the state, and there's been a consistent pot of money. So we expect at some point we're either going to level out or maybe take a slight decrease. That hasn't happened yet, but those numbers are released usually in July, and I certainly can share that with you at that time.
It must make it difficult to plan for any of the programs for next school year.
Absolutely. It's a reverse type of process where typically you put together your grant proposal and then you submit it to the grantor and they tell you, yep, we're going to give you that money. In this case, we have to put together our proposal prior to the teachers leaving for summer vacation. And then we find out in the summertime how much the state is giving us, and we have to make that budget work. And then when we come back to school in the fall, we usually have an approved budget from the state, and that's when we release the dollars to all of the teachers to begin their purchasing. Usually by the beginning of October, that purchasing can begin.
For that current school year, though?
For that current school year, absolutely. Yep.
So is there any upfront funding of some of these programs? So when school starts in September, that they're sort of front-loaded, I guess, with the resources they need for that programming?
So they do have program budgets within Madison Park's budget, and Kevin can certainly speak to that. It is a month of kind of being in limbo before our Perkins Grant opens, where we're not doing any purchasing as a department. But keep in mind that the Perkins Grant cannot be used for any consumables. It's very specific in terms of what we can put on that grant. for the most part, it's used for program improvement. And that's why you saw on the second slide the list of major equipment purchases that really allow the program to improve and meet those industry standards. So smaller items, consumables are not really, what we generally put on the Perkins Grant. There's as all federal grants, there's a supplant versus supplement regulation around how we craft that proposal.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. And my time is up. Before I turn over to Councilor Wu, I just want to recognize that we've been joined by Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Wu.
Good afternoon. So just to start with the where your presentation started around enrollment, great to celebrate that more and more students, especially in recent years, are recognizing the opportunities and choosing the school as 1, 2, 3 in the process. The numbers are still below kind of the height of even where your chart starts with 1,600 students in 2004, 1,500 in 2006. Where do you envision, what's the plan for kind of what the ideal year kind of enrollment by grade level is at this point? Are you aiming for 1,000 students? Are you aiming for 1,500? What is the capacity? If we had the wait list that other CVTE schools have across the state, how many could we actually fit at Madison Park?
As of 2015, our goal was 1,500 students, and it remains 1,500 students, 375 in every grade level.
And that is the capacity?
Could we go more? When you're looking at it from a vocational perspective, the number varies per square footage for every shop. For example, you can't have 100 students in culinary arts from a safety perspective. So again, it's really those are concerned, but 1,500 students would be ideal for us.
Okay. And so, and you said you're going to be over 1,000
over 1,000 students. We have an incoming freshman class slotted at 400. So it's over the 375. Can we fit an additional 25 students? Yes, we can.
Okay. And could you all talk a little bit more about your current thinking on the admissions policy, an application process, or some other way for students to at least kind of identify that this is, that they're interested in vocational education?
Oh, absolutely. Well, before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the folks behind me. They, just like my mother, have eyes in the back of my head. So I just want to acknowledge, again, the greatest faculty that Boston has ever seen. They're right behind us as well, and I really appreciate them and the time that they're spending on a Tuesday afternoon coming down to show their dedication and their commitment to our students. So, folks, thank you very much. But with respect to the, no, don't need to clap. No need to clap. It's the truth. It is the truth. With the admissions policy, again, it's simply to stay in line with our sister schools in the Commonwealth. Every single school has one. In Boston, and again, this is not an indictment on any administration here. This has been going on for decades. And it's something where how do you determine what students are truly interested in a vocational education? It is not creaming the top students off the top. It is really gauging how well is this student going to do within a vocational framework.
Similar to like a Boston Arts Academy.
And again, but again, there is no test. Right. There's no performance test being given. There's no essay that's rated. It's 4 criteria. And it's performance-based. It's based on attendance. It's based on discipline records, but then it's based on an educator recommendation. And when the folks who have, some difficulty or grave concerns, which says, well, why are you going on performance and attendance? Well, for attendance, if we're training you for the world of work, well, you got to show up. You have to show up. It is an important aspect of that. But it's an 80-point system in which now you are seeing from top to bottom, and you simply select 375 students from top to bottom. It is no different than what is done in our sister city-run vocational schools in Lynn, Worcester, and Springfield.
So I heard that loud and clear from faculty. I heard it from alumni, but I just don't see it listed on BPS's presentation in terms of next steps and the work ahead as appearing anywhere. So is the district moving forward with that?
We're going to be revisiting the initial policy and moving forward for some recommendations.
What do you mean by that?
We're looking at the previous submissions that have been made to date. We're going to analyze the pros and cons of those policies and then make any revisions necessary in working with the school and see where we go from there. But we're not quite there. We're in the review process now.
So is the goal to have that in place for, no, I mean, we're already in the lottery, we're already in enrollment for next, so is the goal to have it in place for school year after that?
We haven't identified a timeline just
So
yet.
no
We're
timeline.
still in the review process.
And will that require state approval?
It will
Chapter
require
7.
At first, yeah, it has to be vetted by DESE first, and then it's sent back. So our original submission was vetted and approved by DESE.
Okay, and how long does that take? So if we're already looking at too late for school year 1920, earliest is school year 2021, does the DESE piece add more? I mean, when would you need to be done with it at the city level to get DESE enough time to have it done even potentially for 2021?
Any revisions, it would have to go back to DESE
Yeah.
to start the process over again.
It's in a review process, like I say at this point, and once we have more clarity about what we're going to do and what direction we're going to proceed in, we'll definitely make sure people are aware, and we'll be working in close consultation with Kevin and his team.
Sorry, just to reframe my question one last time because I didn't think it was communicated well. When is the latest that the district could finalize it at the city level without going up to DESE for it to be ready in time for a hypothetical school year 2021 start?
So a previous version has already been approved by DESE, so if there's any changes to those, then we'd have to submit it in time before we activate it for an upcoming school year.
I just wanted to add, additionally, it does need school committee approval, so that would be the other piece
Right.
after the Department of Education approves it. It would go to school committee.
Could one of you explain sort of what happened at school committee? Because it's been before school committee and either deferred or denied, and what sort of transpired at that time? And that looks, I think that was
2015.
15.
It was tabled.
Right.
It was never denied. It has been tabled since October of 2015, and the rationale was because we were creating we didn't want the fear of creating another exam-like school or an exclusive school, and that was from strictly a special education perspective. And one of the things that was explained to the school committee, Madison Park has traditionally had special education rates as high as 41%. But when you look at the special education rates of sister schools such as Minuteman traditionally has a one of the highest special education rates in the Commonwealth for vocational schools, almost mirroring Madison Park's. The only difference is the levels of special education needs and challenges. That's the difference.
And you currently have students at Madison Park now who have a tremendous amount of need, and you're able to provide those services very well, if not exceedingly well, to those kids.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about discriminating against special education students or any other demographic of student, I do not think the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education would pass a policy and send it back to a district without vetting it, just vetting it just for the sake from a civil rights perspective. So the question becomes, why is it good enough for the state, and it's good enough for every vocational school in the Commonwealth, but not here in Boston? And and I'm gonna be very honest and very blunt, that was never explained to me.
Thank you for your response and indulging us. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Madam
going to
Chair.
give Councilor McCarthy his turn. You're all set. Thank you, Councilor
I
McCarthy.
don't want to be skipping on Kim. I don't want to get myself in
No,
trouble.
go back around.
All right.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did screw up.
All right.
Councilor Janey.
See, you're going to get me in trouble.
Follow
I'm sorry.
on this line of
Me,
questioning.
me.
On the actual admissions policy, I was at that school committee meeting back in 2015. I think you were fairly new, Mr. McCaskill, maybe within your first year. I think, I have long advocated that the school department treats all of our schools as if they're the same. So we treat a Boston Arts Academy the same way we would treat an East Boston High School, the same way we would treat Madison, and we shouldn't. We do that with the hiring, so you have these generic job descriptions when you're looking for headmasters, not necessarily someone who's going to have that specialty. So that's number one. I think with the admissions policy, at least my memory from 4 years ago, when it was being discussed, that one concern that people had was that many of the students that Madison currently serves under the scrutiny of a new policy would not be allowed to enter into Madison. And so very important that we make sure that our young people who, in middle school, I'll acknowledge how I was in middle school. So our young people are kind of testing the limits. They are challenging authority in a different way. They may get in trouble. Now, the work that I did prior to coming here was very much grounded in making sure that we're eliminating opportunity and achievement gaps and that we're doing more in terms of dismantling the school-to-prison pipeline. And so if we are going to look at things like school discipline, important to kind of recognize that every person needs kind of that second chance, particularly if they made a mistake in middle school. And so I'm certainly up for the conversation around how we devise an admissions policy that makes sense for Madison, that recognizes that Madison is a tech voc school and that we want folks who, students who want to be at Madison to kind of go to Madison. In terms of the enrollment, I'm looking at, I don't know what slide this is. It has the graph on it. I noticed the decline. Now, my memory also from this time was that the school department did change how students were being assigned to Madison, because for decades, Madison was a dumping ground for the students who either got into fights or students, for whatever reason, didn't work out at other schools. I think now people are lifting up Madison in a different kind of way to make sure that every student who is there wants to be there. Is that where we see this dip, though, from the 2012, 2013, and then in 2014 we see it go down to 890? Is that the change when the school department stopped administratively assigning? Like, are they just assigning students that choose Madison 1, 2, or 3? What's now happening?
No, prior to, I think a lot of it goes, that's some of it, but in 2011, with the innovation plan was made, there was a cap placed on enrollment of 150 students.
Okay, and so what is it currently now?
And so the cap is 375.
The cap, there is a cap
for our incoming freshmen is 375.
So the school department has capped?
We have capped, the school has capped it.
The school has capped students at
yes.
what number?
375.
We've worked in collaboration.
In terms of the freshman
We've
class.
worked in collaboration to figure out that number and what makes the most sense for that school. So,
and if we keep on that path over the next few years, will we hit the mark in terms of getting, we'll get to the 1,500
students.
And how many years will go by for us to get to the 1,500? How long will it take us to get there based on this number and this cap?
3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years. Okay, I want to come quickly because my
No,
colleague.
I gave you extra time.
Okay, because she knows I got a lot of questions and I'm going to ramble. She tried to steal my time. I'm reclaiming my time here. The money. I want to come to the money here. I see a memo. It's from you, Mr. Bloom, that says that there are grants from FY19 that went from $500,000 now down to $94,000. Can you explain what that is? So for fiscal year 19, there was $524,000 in other grants, but in fiscal year 20, down to $94,563. So that's huge, a very significant drop. What is that?
So that is the school redesign grant that has expired, and so the city will be, the school department will be funding that with general funds instead, so that we will make up the difference. We are working with the school, so they essentially, we are protecting them 100% from that reduction in grant funds. It is a real reduction in grant funds from the state, but the school department is making up that difference entirely.
So they're not having any kind of
There will be no negative consequence to the school.
Okay.
No
And
Zero.
so no need for a soft line.
On the grants or on funding overall?
On the grant, There's no, as a loss of the grant, there is no negative impact of funding
On the grants,
on that grant.
as well as the rest of the school funding?
On the general fund budget, the school budget is proposed, or is approved to be up $1.2 million.
And in slide 10, where you break it down, and if I hear you correctly, you're making the argument that Madison is in fact funded the way other VOCTEC, is that what you're saying here? If we look at the per pupil, if you add in the centrally funded school supports and central administration?
It's always hard to be making direct comparisons to other schools. What I would say is Madison Park is one of the highest funded schools in the district, right? And quite possibly the highest when you remove high needs special ed only schools from that equation. And we are very proud of the commitment we've made to Madison Park. I think, making direct comparisons to other schools and districts is hard. So, but we are at the higher end of what we see from other regional vocational schools when we look at a comparable set of costs.
Right, and so I asked the question because what I heard or what I took from your presentation earlier was that it was comparable and even being funded at a higher level per pupil. And I just, the list on slide 12 has all of the schools and how they're funded, and it is old, it's fiscal year 17. But I guess the question that I would have is, again, back to student population.
Sure.
And it's not clear to me that these schools are serving the same kind of students in terms of student need. So whether we're talking about English language learners, whether we're talking about students who are living in deep poverty, if we're talking about students who have special needs. And so I just want to highlight that. So our schools in Boston, period, are serving those children, and Madison Park historically has served those children. And so we've got to make sure if we're going to talk about an apples to apples comparison, then we're making sure that we're getting the funding that our students need that will support their success. And I will save the rest for my round two. So
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Thank you for that. And if those of you in the audience, when you hear something you like or dislike, if you would just use quiet hands or something like that. Councilor,
Jazz hands. You can say it. You can say jazz hands without getting in trouble.
it's been an afternoon already. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a quick statement and then a quick question, really. The $32,000 per pupil, that's wonderful. Having said that, I don't think necessarily throwing money at students or throwing money and making that the silo of what we're doing is really all that important. I think it's how and where you spend the money that we have. I look at the Patriots are middle of the salary cap every year. They win the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers are over the salary cap. They're 5-11. They were awful. Clearly, they're spending money in the wrong areas. My question really related to that is I've been over Madison Park several times. In fact, we went on a trip over to Ireland where they have vocational schools in Limerick and in Donegal. Hospitality vocational schools as well as your traditional vocational schools. They're doing phenomenal things with dropouts as well as young men and women who graduated from high school but can't find their way. I've been over to the O'Brien many times. I've been over Madison Park many times and been welcomed every time I've been there. Having said that, when I've gone through Madison Park and I see science projects being done out in the hallways or carpentry shops being done in used to be a broom closet or wherever, space is an issue. So O'Brien continues to grow as an exam school. People want to have their children and Boston residents go to an exam school. I get that. Having said that, how much are they really impeding on your space? Because I don't think that if the school committee puts a cap on the number, but you say the cap is 375, if you indeed had 375 per, would you have enough room? And I think, honestly, you'd say no. And then how do we fix that? So we're in the middle of Build BPS. How do we make sure that we're not missing this opportunity? Because, I say college isn't for everybody. And, sometimes that's a popular statement, sometimes it's not. My son happened to be at Wentworth. He left Wentworth to join the Army. College wasn't for him. After 2 years, he realized, this isn't for me. He's getting a great education now, I can tell you that much. And it starts at 5 o'clock in the morning, which is a whole other issue. But what's the situation with the space and an honest conversation, and how can we as a council help you and the O'Brien, for that matter, move into the next century?
Well, being relatively new, still about 4 years, but a seasoned veteran now at Madison Park. Space is an issue. And again, I cannot speak upon what has transpired in Madison Park with giving up space, particularly in Building 2. I think Councilor McCarthy, with respect to space in the shops, in our heavy trades, we have more than enough space. Okay. I want to make that point perfectly clear. More than enough space. I think with classroom space, it becomes an issue. And again, in Building 2, which is an academic portion of our building, but again, it is partially shared with O'Brien. And as you alluded to earlier, O'Brien is growing. And the question, and it was in my point, it was rhetorical, but at whose expense? And so if we're running out of space and we're constantly giving up space, that does not allow us to grow. And so if we have these ambitions of growing to a 1,500 student school, right now, classroom-wise, we can probably make it. Realistically, we can probably make it. The question becomes, if O'Brien continues to grow, and I know there's an outcry of equity in the exam schools, if they continue to grow, there's a situation that's brewing. And it's not that it's going to be a Hatfield and McCoy situation in the hallway between the two schools, but at some point in time, when does Madison Park be allowed to expand itself? When do we really allow ourselves to be the type of school like every other vocational school in the Commonwealth become? And so when it really inhibits our growth, I think that there'll be a louder conversation.
And we'll be monitoring the utilization of both schools in both classrooms as we go forward, and we'll make adjustments as we need to. But it's definitely on everyone's minds, and we're watching it very closely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. I do have a little bit of a follow-up question on, please set that, follow-up question on the admissions policy. The part of the NEASC recommendations want a revisit of a revised admissions policy, which was developed, which has been developed in the past. What implications does the NEASC study and their findings have on the follow-through with the admissions policy, which also would likely include an application?
Sure. So the NEASC work and recommendations are basically interwoven between the turnaround plan and everything that goes on in Madison. So they're not different separate buckets of work or initiatives. They all align very well. But with regard to the policy, what we'd be doing is we have a central office NEASC team. It's made up of facilities people, IT people, budget people, myself, the school administration. And what we do is we work with that team to help prepare the NEASC reports. We work with the academic team, special education team, all the different central office departments that we coordinate the work at Madison as it relates to the NEASC work as well. The recommendations that come back from the visit, what we do with that is we take those recommendations, bring it to the team discusses every aspect of the recommendations, then we work with the school in figuring out how we respond to those asks and their needs. So those conversations will be happening in the spring as we prepare for what's required, get some suggestions on how to make improvements to what's asked of us by the NEASC reports. Then we begin implementing those little by little with the help of the school. So the admissions policy is part of that work, and it will be, conversations will be had around that in context of NEASC, as well as the overall previous work that's been done on the policy.
And then the NEASC report also has recommendations around the weighted student formula and the budgeting process. Mm-hmm. Does that get reviewed the same way that you do the admissions policy?
Yes, we take each recommendation and discuss it separately, and we discuss it with all the relevant parties that would help inform those conversations and help us make recommendations on what, if anything, to change or adjust.
So through the most recent NEASC review, Standard 6 and Standard 7 involve those two, and so they're of particular interest to us as they're directly related to the work that we're talking about today. So I just want to highlight those for you and the team that will look at that.
So noted. Thank you.
Thank you. And then when we talk about the turnaround status and the supports that turnaround brings us, I don't know, Ms. Dukovnik, if this is meant for you, but when we talk about turnaround status in sort of a general ed or a more traditional setting, it's one thing. How do we talk differently about turnaround status and the improvements that have been made and continue to need to be made in a vocational technical setting?
So I won't take the liberty to speak on behalf of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It has been a conversation, the fact that they do hold all types of high schools with the exception of our dedicated alternative education programs to the same accountability system, so the same process of setting goals. I will say our experience working with Madison Park the last few years has certainly been that that the same kinds of strategies that can work for improving an academic program in a traditional general education setting can have positive benefits in a school like Madison Park. I would let the school team speak in more detail about what's been most useful for them. But as of right now, we're held accountable for doing the same kinds of turnaround activities and the same kinds of target setting DESE uses for all high schools that are in that status in Boston.
And the one sort of added piece before we open it up, because you may be able to answer this, if not, the rest of the team can do it. On the slide that shows a student in school performance over time with a percentile, the percentiles are not great, right? We want to see certainly a tremendous improvement in this. But what's missing when we stick with the percentile is some of the nuance between the actual MCAS scores. Because if it goes up a few points, even more than just a few points, it may still keep the school in that 1 percentile, but we've seen some sort of more, we see the growth, we can't see it in the percentile. Is that broken down anywhere?
Yes, the specific performance of students and subgroups of students on different targets is broken down on the DESE website. That's information we can make available to the council.
In particular to Madison.
In particular to Madison, but your assertion is absolutely right. The percentile, you might think of it as a lagging, very summative indicator, does not necessarily capture variations. If you looked at all schools that were at the 5th percentile, for example, you might see that some schools are doing better in some subjects versus others. Some might be doing really well on their chronic absenteeism, which is part of the formula. It's hard to look at that number and say, oh, this is what's happening with academics in a particular school. But yes, the state website will make available progress on all indicators.
Right, thank you. And
Yeah,
then,
if I may, again, with respect to the accountability measures, there are no vocational accountability measures. They're all academic. I mean, there are 5 factors that go into the accountability measures. MCAS scores, the student growth percentiles, graduation rate, dropout rates, and advanced academic work. That's what we're being rated on. There is no quality, there is not a metric from a vocational perspective to rate how well our programs compare to other programs. And if it is, it's all anecdotal.
thank you, appreciate that. My time is up, even though my buzzer didn't go off. Councilor Wu?
Thank you, and sorry I stepped out and missed a little bit of Councilor Janey's question period, so apologies if this is duplicative. So I think the chair answered my question that I was asking before, which is that if to have an admissions policy in place for the 2021 school year that would need to be finalized, sort of done by the district by December of 2019. Is that correct? Just any generic policy for any school?
For the upcoming year, around
Yes.
that time would be ideal, yes.
December 2019, okay. And so given that that's even now 2 school years away, and to do that, we'd have to do it by the end of this calendar year. And you said you're starting the review process, what is a reasonable amount of time for the council to give before checking in again, either at a public meeting or offline, about how the review is going?
That's tough for me to say, but we can definitely keep you updated on our conversations. We can figure that out offline, but publicly, I would say it's too early to determine an amount of time for you to check back, because those conversations are ongoing. There are a lot of people that we have to discuss it with, different feedback from constituency groups, from people in central office, impacts enrollment, it impacts budget. There's a lot of people we have to have conversations with, and those can take some time for us to kind of wrap our hands around it. But we will give you an update. Maybe by a month, we can give you an update and see where we are.
Perfect. 1 month sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then in terms of the funding conversation, again, that the chair had been pushing, that represents kind of a new, what we're hearing relative to Build BPS, what makes sense in terms of when some more information might be available about that?
It's tough to say. There's ongoing conversations.
Okay, and so is it not, it's basically not in time for this next fiscal year's budget process, right? Which will basically start tomorrow at the council, but you're thinking about in time for after that then?
There may be some recommendations for latter years, but as of now, for next year, the budget's pretty much set for what it would be for Madison Park for next school year.
Okay, and so no new additional Build
Right.
BPS investments for next school year
Right.
for Madison Park? Okay, thank you, that helps clarify.
Thank you, Counselor Wu. Counselor Janey.
That's disappointing. So I want to come back to facility. There are many folks through our talks with students, parents, educators, administrators, friends group have mentioned the school building. Thank you for kind of sharing I don't want to say tension, but this issue of growing space for your neighbor, your next door to you, and what that means in terms of implications for Madison. If we are truly going to offer the kind of education that our students deserve, it's not just about classrooms, it's not just, our staff, it's not just about funding, it's not just about our admissions policy, but making sure that we've got a world-class facility that can offer the type of education that we want our young people to have. And some folks have said, we need to just a whole new building somewhere. We need to kind of repair this building. I'm interested in what your thoughts are, you, Mr. McCaskill, and certainly you, Mr. DePina, in terms of how we do this in a way that keeps the school, in the heart of our city, which is Roxbury, which makes sure that we have all that we need in terms of the labs, so not just regular classrooms, but if we're going to do this, and how we do it in a way that does not disrupt the education that is currently happening, because it's not like we can say, like we did with Dearborn, where we're just going to uproot our young people, put them at the Burke, and then when the school is done, we'll put them back here. We can't do that with a school like Madison, because what you have, your automotive program, for example, you've got to have right there on site. So help me understand what, best case, what you'd like to see if you could have your way, what you'd like to see, and then I think the question is for us, how do we help you get there?
I love our location.
I love your location.
Love the location. And so, again, trying to be politically correct. One, we're at the heart of the city. We are accessible for every neighborhood, which makes it the perfect place. And so when we look at a situation, why would we want to move it? The question becomes, if we are really going to look at changing the landscape in certain programs, how do we do that? I am by no means an expert on architecture, an interior designer, or any type of construction going on, but I'm sure there's a lot of intelligent individuals here in Boston who can figure that out.
Right. And I guess the question then becomes, do we currently have the space in the school as it exists to then kind of say, we are moving certain programs to this side of the building while we do the repairs or the renovations on this side of the building? Is a kind of like this, maybe this is a longer conversation, maybe it's a different hearing that we need to call, but I want to make sure that we are doing the investment that we need to do to make sure that the actual facility is a world-class facility. Great that we have, great people, because obviously you need great educators in our building to educate our young people, but we've also need the facility, particularly for, a technical voc school like Madison.
Definitely think it's a longer conversation.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. I had a quick question just in terms of assignment. Are any of the students who are being displaced from West Roxbury ending up at Madison?
Yes, they are.
And, okay. And how did that happen? Was this a mutual conversation where those young people, or is this just the fallback, we've got space, so we're just, once again, going to put students there? Are students from West Roxbury who obviously wanted to stay, and so we should acknowledge, wanted to stay in their school community in West Roxbury, now that they're being moved or asked to move, were they participating in making an active, informed decision in ending up at Madison? Or
Yes.
was this just another administrative assignment?
No, it was not an administrative assignment. It was purely based on their choices, their families' choices. We worked with the families for about a month and a half, but we actually had school fairs where we had open houses where families would come visit, meet with all the schools.
Thank you.
We
I
did
don't
that
mean to
during the
cut you
day.
off, Mr.
It's time,
DePina,
sure,
but
yeah.
I know this is going to buzz any minute. Can you tell me what percentage of students from West Roxbury High School are going to be in Madison Park?
I couldn't tell you right now, but I can get you that information.
Okay, I would appreciate understanding that. And was there an increase in students with disabilities coming into Madison for the next school year?
Roughly about the same. We range anywhere between 30 and 35% of students with special needs are coming in.
Okay,
And that may be a tad higher.
okay, wonderful. I have more questions, but I do want to make sure that we have time for anyone who wants to testify, so I'm happy to hold off and have some conversation offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. My one I think for me, a closing question to the panel, and I think it's something that we'll explore probably in depth during our upcoming budget cycle, is some of the spending policies with CTE money and CVTE money, because I know many of our schools have CTE programs that take some of that money, that get some Perkins money and get some of this other funding. So I am curious, and we could probably save this for our budget hearing, but I want to understand where we're making those choices, because although there is some, where I taught, we used CTE money, and it's good programming, but every one of those dollars spent outside of Madison is money spent outside of Madison. So ensuring that we're doing all we can for Madison first, but sharing the wealth among the other schools is okay, but Madison has to be the focus of our spending choices when it comes to career and technical ed in those spending dollars. So Dave, if you just make a note for that for our budget process, and I'm going to ask if Councilor Wu has last questions. Councilor Janey?
Yep, just one last question. To follow that up, I'm wondering on slide 13, the Perkins Grant allocation breakdown. So FY19, 621,000, yes? I'm curious in understanding what percentage of that. So to Councilor Essaibi-George's point, it's a large part of money. It's getting shared with all of the kind of career tech programs throughout the district. How much, though, is Madison getting? Is that something we can answer now, or should we save that to the budget hearing?
In terms of the Perkins Grant, the funding was probably about 50% of the grant going to Madison. And additionally, then there would have been funding that was also allocated to other schools as well as central office.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all. You're welcome to stay here for public testimony. We have about 8 people or so, 7 people, including a few folks from NEASC. So I'm going to ask that NEASC join us first for public testimony. I think George is coming down to testify. You can choose to do it sitting if you'd like. I don't know how much testimony you have to share, or you can do it standing. Perfect. Thank you.
My written testimony for you.
Great. We'll grab that after you're done presenting, or you can leave it there, and that works too.
So I'd
George,
like
if
to-
you would introduce yourself for the record, and thank you for being here.
I will. Thank you. My name is George Edwards. I'm the chair of the Commission on Public Schools at the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. I'd like to start by thanking you for your interest in Madison Park and for holding this hearing and for the opportunity for me to testify before you today. It's really been a pleasure over the last few years working with Executive Director Kevin McCaskill and his team, including the teachers here from Madison Park, as they've gone through the accreditation process. A little bit about NEASC. We're a federally funded and recognized accrediting agency for public, private, and international schools serving grades K through 12. We accredit public elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and career and technical schools in the 6 New England states. Among the schools that we accredit are over 100 career and technical schools, including every career and technical school in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Our goal at NEASC and the Commission on Public Schools is to assist public schools in the ongoing cycle of self-reflection, peer review, school improvement, and ongoing monitoring to ensure that all students experience a high-quality education. The Committee on Career and Technical Institutions at NEASC works with the comprehensive K-9 through 12 technical high schools and with numerous career technical centers throughout New England to ensure that the technical programs that are provided to students are responsive to the needs of local, state, and regional labor markets, and also to ensure rigorous academic curriculum, instructional techniques, and assessment practices. The designation of NEASC accreditation signifies that a school has voluntarily agreed to commit to a school improvement process that uses a set of standards for accreditation based on research and best practice. Our process is built on 4 foundational principles. Those principles are alignment to standards, self-reflection by the school community, peer review by a team of unbiased fellow educators, and the process of ongoing review and support that I've already mentioned. Madison Park Technical Vocational High School underwent its most recent decennial accreditation review in October 2018. The school community spent the previous year seriously and honestly reflecting upon their programs and practices, which culminated in a written self-study report. A team of 20 peer evaluators spent almost 4 days at the school, during which time they performed classroom observations, they conducted formal and informal interviews with students, with teachers, with school leaders, parents, community members, and they also examined documents to gain a deep understanding of the school's effectiveness in carrying out its stated mission. What I'd like to do is to just summarize some of the findings in the report, and I would like to build on something that Councilor Janney said earlier about talking about the positives. There are many positives at Madison Park. One is that the committee recognized the work of the teachers who worked tirelessly to adjust their instructional practices to meet the needs of students. The committee also identified the vision and leadership exhibited by the administrative team that promoted a shared enthusiasm among staff and established a clear sense of purpose for the school. The team identified the high level of commitment, caring, and enthusiasm demonstrated by staff and the family-like atmosphere and the positive climate and culture at the school. The involvement of industry and higher education leaders that has been instrumental to the school's growth. The work of the Boston Public Schools District Administration, who have empowered the executive director to function as an educational leader for the Madison Park Vocational Technical High School. And the strong sense of community by the business and higher education partnerships that provide extensive, authentic, real-life learning opportunities for students. The committee also identified some recommendations, and you've heard some of them already, but I'd just like to focus on a few. So one is to review the current security procedures to address any potential safety issues for students passing between the buildings on the Madison Park campus. To develop and implement a plan to repair, upgrade, add, and replace current security camera systems throughout the school. To revisit the revised admissions policy developed by the school's administrative team and adopt the suggested changes needed to ensure student access and equity at Madison Park. To develop a long-term capital plan for the school which addresses major structural problems such as roof leaks and plumbing issues at the school. To create and implement a plan to upgrade the appearance of the school through the replacement of broken furniture, window treatments, improperly functioning equipment, and intermittent Wi-Fi service to create a more welcoming visual appearance and a more supportive educational setting. To re-examine and make necessary adjustments to the weighted funding budget template to take into account and more fairly reflect the increased financial needs of a vocational technical high school in delivering a rigorous education to a high-needs student body, to develop and implement a plan to add supplemental help for students with disabilities and English language learners while their students are in their technical programs, to curtail the creation of additional technical programs in the City of Boston's public schools that directly duplicate or compete with those already offered and being effectively run at Madison Park. The visiting team encouraged Madison Park to continue to strengthen and develop the marketing plan to recruit students and to add and to position Madison Park as the necessary partner with business and higher education to workforce development and training in the City of Boston. The visiting team found that Madison Park has the conceptual understanding, the commitment, the capacity, and the competency to develop a response to the major recommendations of this decennial report into a school improvement plan that integrates with the school's turnaround strategies and, when implemented with fidelity, have an immediate and lasting positive impact on student achievement. In conclusion, Madison Park is the only high school in the district that offers students a fully integrated curriculum of both academic and career technical programs. And just as an aside for a second, I think it's really interesting to think about career and technical education as not just preparing students for the workforce or for vocational training, but also to prepare them for college, because many of our career and technical students are going to go on to further post-secondary education to prepare for their careers. Madison Park is not a neighborhood school, but as you know, a citywide magnet school that requires consistent level of funding and support commensurate with similar comprehensive technical high schools in the Commonwealth. Students deserve an educational facility that is properly resourced and maintained to provide them with a 21st century education. The New England Association of Schools and Colleges urges you to include significant facility upgrades to Madison Park in the Build BPS plan. Madison Park needs the full support of BPS, the school committee, and the City Council Committee on Education for its students to grow and prosper. We recommend that Madison Park receive sufficient and consistent financial and staff resources to achieve the singular vision of positioning Madison Park Technical Vocational High School as the premier career technical high school in the City of Boston, one to which all Boston students will want to attend to further their college and career aspirations. Once again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for this opportunity to testify today. I would like to thank Sam and the members of the BPS administration who have worked very closely with us to develop plans to implement the recommendations from the NEASC reports. And I'd like to congratulate Kevin and the students, teachers, and staff of Madison Park for the fine work that they're doing for the students of the City of Boston. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
George, thank you very much for being here. We typically don't ask questions, but if my colleagues want to entertain it, I want to appreciate you and what you do every day, because I've done both a visit and I've participated in the self-study and the visit portion when I was teaching, and both are very physically and emotionally and thoughtfully demanding on your team as well as the school that's being reviewed. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your recommendations, and for the continued work ahead to make Madison truly let's realize its full potential and how special it truly is. And I really appreciate the teachers for muscling their way through that report. Thank you, Madison Park staff. Next, I'd like to call up Jim Costello, and following him will be Louis Elisa for public comment. Jim.
Good afternoon, Councilor.
Good afternoon. And if you would just
Bend over
really get into that microphone. Thank you.
My name is Jim Costello. I'm a resident of Jamaica Plain. and I'm a retired carpentry instructor from Madison Park. First of all, I'd really like to just underline everything that the NESAC report was just delivered to you. I think that's clearly what needs to happen. I worked for a number of years on the admissions policy. I spent many hours in the school department dealing with, actually, John McDonough, as he was the interim superintendent when Lois left. And I was in the school as an employee at the time that we tried to implement that policy. There was a failure in administration at that point, a failure to provide the direction and the support to promote Madison Park as a unique application in the Boston Public Schools. That was the year that the numbers dropped precipitously because the school department did wish to recognize the implementation of our admissions policy. There was no promotional work done. Mr. McDonough had promised that every middle school guidance counselor would spend a week at Madison Park so that they would understand that Madison Park wasn't just a dumping ground, as Councilor Cheney has recognized, which it clearly was. I was there when the school was 1,700, and I left before the school hit that lowest number. The issue of the actual assignment policy is that there isn't an assignment policy until there's more people who want to be in the school than there are spaces in the school for them to be in. So that one does not look at an assignment policy currently and say, well, you don't meet the criteria. You haven't had the kind of support from an instructor at your school. You have failed to attend school consistently. You have not passed an MCAS test yet. These are all criteria that are used in every vocational school in the state, as was stated a number of times. Our admissions policy is no different, was no different from most of the schools in the state. Why it's been in abeyance has to do with the fact, I believe, that there hasn't been the promotional work necessary to get people to be aware of the fact that Madison Park is an institution of a unique nature that provides access and opportunities to students that can't be matched in any other school in the system. I've had many of my students who've been very successful. Some of them have decided to go to college and then come back and end up as carpenters. And they are doing very well as carpenters. But the number of students that are capable of doing that out of the population of the Boston Public Schools, particularly with the needs that the population at Madison Park face, those outcomes are not a given. There's a lot of input that has to happen. And that input is not just from the staff. Obviously, the staff is working very hard to do that. The input is also from the community. It's the support of parents. It's the support of other members of the community in making sure that students get the experience that is necessary for them to be successful. And that starts the first time they come into the building. That happens in the classroom every day. That happens in the shop every day. And that if the shops aren't being taken care of, if there aren't sufficient administrators, when I started there were 20 administrators. When I left there were 5. That's shocking. There's a serious problem here in funding of the structure of the institution so that supervision can be adequately exerted over what happens in the shops. I'm at the bottom end of the shops, the hard end, okay? This isn't necessarily what happens upstairs in the health services or in the technical services, but in the hard shops, there's serious work that has to happen on a daily basis. And this serious work has to be supported by administrators who understand what needs to happen and have the authority to try to make that happen. And when that does happen, things run well. When that doesn't happen, opportunities are lost. People ask people, can you send me some students? I need 5 boys to come, or girls for that matter, and to be carpenters. to join an apprentice program, to join with our colleagues at Youth Build, to develop their skills further. And we don't have the adequate number of students to send out. Students aren't interested in taking on that challenge at age 17 or 18. At age 22, when they've come back, they're seriously looking for that. And we send them to Youth Build then, too, because it's still available to them. So working with outside partnerships is an extraordinarily important part of what happens at Madison Park. But admitting students to Madison Park, anyone who wants to go can go now. All they have to do is say, I'd want to go to Madison Park. There isn't any restriction on that. And obviously, the school department is sending students to Madison Park who have no idea about being in Madison Park. I mean, I know some of my colleagues are dealing with people who, students who are of the most involved nature, the most involved. And clearly, when you mix people who require serious, focused attention with people who are trying to learn a skill, someone has to give. And that's a very sad situation that's created by an admissions policy that doesn't recognize that there are certain populations in the city that shouldn't be handling heavy equipment, that shouldn't be in a system, in a school, where there's a huge population of people who are not interested in supporting their own, the needs, the particular needs of their community, of these other individuals in their school. They're essentially a separate but equal group. And we all know that doesn't work very well. So I highly recommend that people pay a little more attention to the school. It's always easy to come into the school when NESAC is going to be there because everything's nice and tidy and all good. But if you were to come in on an average Friday afternoon or an average Wednesday morning, you might find a very different presentation. And the idea that everything is consistent is important, but not always possible. So I'm extraordinarily disappointed that people aren't, that you're talking about an admissions policy that was worked over for 3 years solid, from the time the teachers in the school got together with the administration to develop the innovation plan, which I know you've talked about before here, and to try to implement that innovation plan, which fell dreadfully flat due to a failure of administrative practice and administrators, and then it was never picked up effectively after that point. So the balls have been in the air. They just keep hitting the ground because there isn't enough people to keep them in the air. And in my view, I started with staff where there was only one person in the carpentry department. When I left, there were 3. It takes 3 to run a program and have an outside program. With 1, people weren't doing any carpentry. They were just keeping them busy. Now, that's a situation that existed back 20 years ago. And since that time, almost all of our programs are running full with full staff. They're not running full with full clientele because the numbers have been held too low. And that's not intentional, that we don't want to have enough kids there. It's that the implementation of the policy put limits on it when it was recognized that we weren't getting the kind of input. And that was from a failure to engage the guidance counselors, from a failure to advertise the fact that the school is a vocational school, the fact to promote it. Its promotion has been less than adequate.
Thank you very much, Jim. If we could have Louis, and then following Louis is Charles Mohammed.
Good afternoon. My name is Louis Elisa. I am the president of the Garrison Trotter Neighborhood Association, and I am also a member of the Friends of Madison Park Association, which has been together now for more than 8 years. We came together 8 years ago because the critical situation in Madison required us to do that. to make sure that Madison Park would survive. I first want to thank Councilor Essaibi-George and Councilor Wu and Councilor Janey for their consistent interest in Madison Park. I need to tell you that prior to your commitment to get involved in Madison Park, your predecessors, including those in the school department, had spent far less time than you've committed in the last year and a half. Matter of fact, some of them still have never been into the school, yet seek to run the school. I came here today a little bit off prepared because I thought we were going to just talk about the admissions policy, which is important. But I want to say that I'm a Voc Tech graduate. I graduated from Alexander Hamilton Vocational Technical High School in 1967 as a certified draftsman, which ordered my life from that point to where I am now. I've lived in 3 different continents. I've worked for 3 presidents, a number of governors, and mayors. And the training I got as a draftsman was the foundation of how I view the world. But it's important to let you know that there's never been a problem with Madison Park High School. The problem has never existed among its students. The students who attend Madison Park are the same demographic students who were there from the beginning, who've been in every vocational technical high school in any urban area in any city that I've worked in this country and across the world. While we greatly appreciate the new and improved interest in Madison Park, we are yet a bit skeptical as to why we are trying to narrow the accessibility for entrance into these very important life-altering and future-building programs to those who may be more in need of them. 7 years ago, while struggling and fighting with the Boston Public Schools Department and its leadership to prevent them from shuttering the doors and dispersing the students, we heard very little and saw nothing from those who are here today, dedicated and committed, and we appreciate that. But they weren't there. There is no failure in Madison Park Vocational Technical High School. There's no failure or lack of commitment in its faculty, staff, or administrators. There's no failure in the students. The only real change to take place is that at Madison Park, for Madison Park, is that the Boston Public School Department has now understood the importance of a vocational technical high school in the city of Boston. And they now see the light and have begun to appreciate the critical role that vocational technical schools must play in the growth and development of our city, state, and region, and have come to terms with the idea that the students are there and are worthy to receive the services and support and resources, enjoy the same benefits as other students in this city and this state and this region. While racing towards the new reality and understanding of Madison Park, we cannot be unmindful of the importance of making sure that none who desire or are in need of this very special educational experience will receive that opportunity. We can't close people out who really want to get this education and training. While we support and have advocated and promoted the idea of admissions policy, we're also aware that if not applied mindfully, it's possibly a pitfall and a road that we can take that is dangerous for the students who are there and who should be there. We can and will create a process that will be exclusionary and harmful to a kind of student we have fought mightily to include and support over the past 20 years. We ask that those whomever are responsible for shaping and managing the forward progress of this admission policy, they reevaluate the weight and depth of the discipline and absentee variables. Our inner city youth are challenged in so many different ways than those in the suburban areas. We also know that given the uneven disparity in application and disproportionate discipline for children of color, a straight line regression model that weighs how a child fits in the scaling process will not be fair and not be even. A clear understanding of cause and effect will clearly work to the advantage of children of color if we take in consideration what their challenges are. We ask that we weigh the mean by applying when looking at the applications, the very subjective areas of discipline, tardiness, and absenteeism. Homeless students, sibling managers, and children from distant areas and locations in the city will experience a very different weighted mean, a very different way of experiencing education because of their challenges. Lateness, tardiness, absenteeism has a lot to do with their personal quality of life. We can't act like suburbia where the mean is flat, where you can have people come close on each side and you look at, well, if they're late or they're tardy or they're absent. Sometimes children are absent because they're taking care of other children. Sometimes children are late because they can't catch a bus or they change locations, they're living further away. There are other variables. I'm just asking that in looking at this admission policy, we be mindful of how this process works. We be mindful that all students don't have good guidance counselors, that everybody's not looking on behalf of all children the same way. I say give them opportunity because I guarantee if they get into Madison, they will see a leveling of the playing fields. They will have an opportunity. If they don't belong there, we have programs within Madison that will work that out. But don't deny them access with a mean that does not validate what they seek in life, which is to have a better quality of life. Finally, it's a shame that this school and its students and faculty have been disrespected as they've been over the past 7 years. It's a shame that 7 years ago, when they tried to close the school, when a headmaster who was certified for 40 years in vocational technical education, a doctor in vocational education, was run out of the school because the school department and its leadership, including its superintendent, would not support it. That students showed up on the first day of schools and had no programs. That teachers weren't allowed to be hired for 55 days. They now turn around and say, well, we think we're doing a good thing for vocational education. I need all these organizations and groups to join with Madison Park as teachers and faculty. I need the governor of the state. I need the mayor of the city. I need my congresswoman and senators to go in there and ask the private industry council and the Convention Council and the Department of Transportation and all those agencies that have jobs and need to fix these jobs. The private sector, people in energy and electricity and construction to come together and work with Madison Park. The resources are there. We just need the leadership that will commit to do it. I thank you for the work that you're doing on this council, but we need the consistent commitment that we're going to make sure this school can serve this city at this time for the children of our future.
Thank you, Louis. And if you would, if you have comments that you would like to submit, we can circulate them with our colleagues. Charles Muhammad, and following Charles will be Gary Kaplan.
Peace and blessings, and thank you, City Councilor Anissa Essaibi-George, for chairing the Education Committee, holding this hearing, and of course, City Councilor Kim Janey and City Councilor Michelle Wu. You do an awesome and amazing job. Again, my name is Charles Muhammad. I graduated from Madison Park High School. I'm the oldest of 5 children. My brothers and sisters graduated from Madison Park High School. My sister Barbara, Stacy, Eugene, and David. My sister Barbara is now, she changed her name to Zakia. She's a registered nurse. My brother Eugene, who changed his name to Tamer, owns his own business in Atlanta. My sister is in Detroit. My brother David, who's a Boston police officer, getting ready to graduate in 2 years. Madison Park High School is near and dear to my heart. And about 4 years ago, I had the opportunity of sitting down with Brother Kevin, and we discussed Madison Park High School. Madison Park High School used to be from the post office on Malcolm X Boulevard all the way to the Reggie Lewis Center. So we had plenty of space. And we're talking about 2,300 students plus. The red building, the yellow building. Yeah, the yellow building. We had our auditorium, music stars that went to school there, New Edition, Maurice Starr, the list goes on, Margot Thunder. The current location of Madison Park was to be named the Humphrey Center, which is still supposed to be part of Madison Park High School. We need to listen to the mayor, the council needs to listen to the executive director, the teachers, and the students, because they know exactly what's going on at Madison. They understand the needs of Madison. And it's a shame that our city, our leadership, has turned their backs on our children. Our children are our future. They may be only 30% of the population, yet they're 110% of the future. We need to listen to the team. We need to listen to the community. We have to continue to partner with quality partners such as T. Michaels and the People's Academy. It's not rocket science to do the right thing. And what you're doing now is awesome and amazing. We've been crawling, MP for life. We've been taking little steps, but it's now time for us to take large steps so that Madison Park can be the school that it was intended to be here in the city of Boston and here in America. I like to close, I'm sorry, I should have said that I represent Minister Randy Muhammad of Muhammad Mosque number 10 in beautiful Uptown Grove Hall, because he also graduated from Madison Park High School. So we have Madison Park High School in our DNA and in our hearts. And I like to close with this, and this is from A Torchlight for America from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This book was actually given to former superintendents for the Boston Public School. Education is vital to each individual's life chances and the quality of the society as a whole. There is a direct relationship between having a high school diploma and one's ability to get a job and to secure one's future financially. A young adult between the ages of 25 and 34 is more than 2 to 5 times more likely to be unemployed if he or she does not have a high school diploma. This means that if young adults do not at least gain a high school diploma, his or her chances for surviving in the society are severely crippled. Again, please listen to the teachers, the students, the parents, the community in your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Next, we have Gary Kaplan, followed by Linda Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay? And thank you, counselors. And thanks to everybody for hanging around this long. I'm Gary Kaplan. I'm the executive director of JFY Networks, a nonprofit based in Boston. Today's hearing is a very important event because it highlights the importance of Madison Park Technical Vocational High School to the city and to the region. Madison Park is a uniquely critical component of the city's and the region's workforce development system. As the only vocational school in the heart of the region's technology cluster, it symbolizes the city's and the state's commitment to workforce development as no other school can. Yet the school has suffered from lack of support, both financial and cultural, for many years. It has struggled academically, the basis of school rankings. But in the past 3 years, a new school administration has begun to improve academic performance, the critical first step of turnaround, and create new and relevant occupational training clusters, options. Past discussions of Madison Park have compared it to Worcester Tech, an outstanding nearby example of urban vocational excellence. I've visited the school and I've done some research on its history. One of the cardinal lessons of that history is the fundamental importance of basic academic skills in vocational education and school standing. The first priority of the Worcester Tech turnaround team was the restoration of academic credibility through improved MCAS scores. They recognized that a failing high school, academic or vocational, is not an attractive option for students or parents, nor is it a compelling partnership candidate for an employer. In 2006, the year before their move to the new building, Tech's combined advanced and proficient percentage in ELA was 27%, and in math, 35%. In 2007, the first year in the new building, those percentages rose to 48% and 46%. They kept rising until they broke 90% in ELA and 80% in math. That took until 2013, 7 years of focus on basic academic skills. They've maintained those levels with further gains ever since. Now, by every measurement of academic performance, Tech leads the city of Worcester. MCAS scores, mass core completion, SAT scores, graduation rate, higher education attendance rate, all the indicators. Tech is now the only level 1 high school in the city of Worcester. What we know with certainty about the labor market of the future is that all jobs will require higher and higher levels of literacy, numeracy, technology fluency, critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills, teamwork, and all the other 21st century skills. The old distinction between academic and technical is dissolving. All occupational distinctions are blurring. The workforce is becoming omnicompetent. It is highly significant that 99% of the new jobs created since the Great Recession have gone to college graduates. To produce job candidates who can thrive in such a fluid, skill-hungry labor market, vocational education has to excel in academic skills as well as vocational skills. The academic foundation of language and math that supports all learning, academic, technical, and lifelong, has to keep pace with the market's escalating demands. Academic performance must be given equal attention with other concerns. In 2015, Madison Park was demoted to level 4 after its MCAS scores dropped to the bottom of the state rankings. In 2015-16, the new executive director, Kevin McCaskill, asked if JFY Networks could work with him to improve academic performance. The highest priority was math, the foundation of STEM and all technical fields. Math scores had declined to their lowest level in 11 years. In our first year at Madison Park, 2015-16, we helped raise the advanced proficient rate 7 percentage points and reduce the failure rate 16 points. In our second year, we raised advanced proficient another 12%. That 19% 2-year increase was the largest gain in the state. While Madison Park was making this gain in math, the BPS district lost 2 points and the state remained flat. Madison Park has all the demographic challenges of urban schools, as we've heard. In addition, the vocational schedule allots only half the academic class hours of a comprehensive high school. And like other open enrollment schools, Madison Park is hard-pressed to deal with the widely varied academic needs of its students, 1/3 of whom enter from out of district, often out of country, with no previous performance data available. Helping these students cope with the basic high school curriculum and the English language and graduate in 4 years is an overwhelming task. For all these reasons, MCAS and college readiness require special attention and support. JFY Networks is a Boston-based nonprofit with the mission of increasing economic opportunity and social mobility for disadvantaged, underserved youth and their families through education and training. We have worked with Boston's public schools since the advent of MCAS. Our blended learning program has helped boost student achievement at Madison Park and many other schools. Our curriculum is aligned to the relevant standards, MCAS 2.0, Next Gen Accuplacer, SAT, or course curriculum. It's integrated into regularly scheduled classes taught by the regular teachers with in-class support from our staff. We use best-in-class software aligned tightly to the standards. The program achieves disciplined implementation by providing year-long classroom oversight and support. It produces high achievement through the feedback loop of constant examination of student performance data and adaptation of instruction. The ongoing dialogue about Madison Park needs to give academic performance equal attention with other concerns. Academic proficiency is the foundation of technical vocational credibility. Madison Park's academic profile needs to look like Worcester Tech's in order for the school to fulfill its role as the workforce development engine that Boston and the region need. It has shown that it can achieve substantial gains. It needs to continue that focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next, we have Linda Freeman.
Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I am Linda Freeman. I'm a Boston Public School SPED parent. My son is at Boston Green Academy, but he's also been enrolled in an extended school year. And I would like to thank Madison Park due to their encouragement for my son, even when some of his quirks of having pickles and fried pickles on the menu. They've also encouraged him to have the opportunity to try the other vocational things during the summer. And for all our students with disabilities, it gives them a pathway to try something, try a field, just to try and to see if they would like it. Because without this pathway for our students with the disabilities, I believe that a lot of them would be lost and not included into our mainstream citizens who should be more receptive, but not always. I congratulate you all. Thank you so much. The second thing I would like to reiterate is I find it disheartening that when it comes to MCAS, and our school system still uses our students with disabilities whose scores do not do well, impacts and it impounds our schools whose MCAS scores could be high, but they're included in there, and it should not be included. If our students with disabilities have the high cognitive ability to take the MCAS and pass it with excellence, that's all well and fine. But those who can't, why are our schools and our teachers and staff who have worked so hard to keep these kids educated, raise them to a level beyond our hearts and all our expectations? Why? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next, we have Jahira Labonte, and then following Jahira will be T. Michael Thomas.
Good afternoon. My name is Jahira Labonte. I'm a new parent to the technical Boston Technical Bulk. My son comes from Greater Lowell Technical Bulk, and we also from the town of Worcester. And first of all, I want to thank the school for giving us a second home, a second family, because that's the way I feel my kid has been welcomed to. And I feel like seeing other technical and being a parent in other technical schools make me see quite a big difference this school has been treated. It made me say that it gets me very mad and concerned that it's not giving the same quality of education and the same quality of care. It's not because the staff does not care. They have great staff that do care. They have great people who really care to give the kids education. but they don't have a lot of resources and a lot of help from people who really need to help them. And I think they're being treated differently from other tech. They are. In the little time that I've been in the school, in the little time that I've been seeing and what I have seen, and the problem in the school is not the kids. I'm a team mom from the baseball team of this school. I treat the kids. And what I hear is, Mom, give me a hug. Come on. And I hear is, but I want to do more in the school. I want to get my grades up, but nobody cares. And that is sad. Oh, I only have to do a 60%. Oh, I only have to do this. We have to motivate them more. And I think if getting a selection in school, it gives a better understanding for kids who really wants to be there. And it helps the other kids who are already there, they're struggling with those kids who care, they're motivated to be there, motivate the other kids to do better in school and to push themselves better, not to margin them where they are, who they are, or where they're coming from. And that sometimes is bad what I see, they are the margin. And sometimes society is giving up on these kids. Parents are giving up on these kids. Why should the school give up on them? It's not fair. We should not give up on these kids. And location-wise, if the structure was more part of us, why we took more part of our location to give to other school? And now we're trying to grow, and we don't have where to grow. It's not okay. And my point is that it's great to implement the same rules as the other technical books that are in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That has worked for them. Trust me, it has. I've seen it with my own eyes as a parent with my son. And we need a better security in the school. The other schools have that. Why not? Why this school doesn't have it? Why other kids have better benefits than our kids? It's not okay. Why sending in substitute teachers or other teachers that doesn't really care to teach in this school? Why not make a better selection of staff that really cares and be helpful with the staff that really cares? Because they are. I've been in the school, like I told you, only a month, and I have seen it. I went to the school meeting with the parents and teachers meeting, and I can see, and I can tell you, I saw a lot of teachers that really cares about the kids. And I think there are funds, there can be more funds to this school. We are in the heart of Boston. My reason that I came to Boston is because I have a very ill daughter. Like me, there's other families who have to move to the heart of Boston. And it's sad to come to the heart of Boston. Boston, the main city of Massachusetts, and see what is happening in the main city. How the kids are being treated in their education in the main city. Like nobody really cares about it. And this is the sample. This is the only bulk take there is in the area, and we are not helping enough. I think this school has the best potential, but it needs help from all the leaders to become one, to help these kids, because they're amazing kids. I want you guys to go there and spend time with those kids like I have spent time with. We can margin those kids. Okay, they're runs of so many things. There's so many things going on in their life, but they're making the effort. There's one guy who didn't make it to the team because of his grades, and then they give him a chance. His grades are coming up. So something is saying to you, there is potential in these kids, but we have to work as a team to get these kids in a better lifestyle. And sometimes these schools, technical books, are the only thing that can help them accomplish better in life. I want to thank you very much, and I appreciate Boston Technical High School for giving us a home, for giving us a second chance. And my son, the first time he came, he wanted to run. But then he sit me down, Mom, I'm going to stay in that school because I'm going to prove every college that it's not where you are, it's who you are. And I'm going to help other kids become better. Trust me. And I'm his mom, and I'm here to stand up for my son, to stand up for all those Boston Technical kids that deserve better. And they deserve to be treated like every technical bulk in the state of Massachusetts. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you very much. My colleague wants to give some comments before she leaves, and then we'll get to the rest of our public testimony.
So thank you all for being here, and I apologize. I have another commitment that starts at 6, which I'm already afraid I will be late to. But thought it was really important, obviously, to be here with my colleagues, continuing our work, supporting Madison and trying to strengthen Madison. In closing, I just want to thank the folks, again, who are on the front line every single day working with our young people, starting with you, Mr. McCaskill. Thank you for your leadership. Also to the other panelists and folks, Central, who are supporting the school, certainly to our staff, our educators who are here, parents that are here, and other advocates. As I said earlier, we can look at Madison as the opportunity to really do something different in our city. Someone mentioned on the panel that this was really about workforce development, but it's also about entrepreneurship. What is happening at Madison is not just about teaching people to kind of go and work for someone else. It is about how you can also start your own business, whether it's in the trades or some other field. And so making sure that we are doing everything. I mean, we've heard from in public testimony as well, and the questions and comments from my colleagues, I think the commitment that is here and that people want to see Madison succeed. My father, who is an educator in BPS, started as a school teacher at the Bancroft, was a principal at the Roosevelt, and then was at ORC. The Humphrey Center at Madison, for maybe when you were there, Brother Charles, I don't know, if he was a headmaster then. Very important to me, deeply committed to making sure that we all succeed. But we've got to come together as a community, one, to kind of change our narrative and talk about what is working. We've got to control the narrative. What is working? We're not going to see more students choose Madison if all the adults around them talk about what's wrong with Madison. So we've got to make sure that we are changing the narrative. And that does not mean that we don't acknowledge the work that remains. There is a lot of work that remains, but I am hopeful with the team that you have in place, Kevin, and the additional resources, so we need additional resources into Madison to make sure that we can do the work that needs to be done. Finally, again, we've got an opportunity in our city. Madison sits in the heart of Roxbury, in the heart of Boston, and it is surrounded by millions and millions of dollars that is being invested in development, and it is shameful that we are not doing more to ensure that our young people are part of that they have the opportunity to build the relationships through the amazing partnerships that exist. We've got to do more. We've got to do better. That they have the opportunity to get the real life skills needed. We've got to do more. We've got to do better. And then finally, with the opportunity to earn money while they're doing it. All very important. I look forward to the next steps. I know that my colleagues, as they close out this hearing, will offer some next steps in terms of how we move this conversation forward, and that we keep making sure that we're doing everything possible, certainly on the city council level, at the school department level, throughout to support Madison. I will certainly, I'm very interested in the rest of the public testimony, so we'll make a point of going back to review the tape. I apologize that I do have to get to this other event at 6, but I want to thank my colleagues again for their partnership and their leadership in this work, and thank all of you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. T. Michael Thomas, and then Joa DePina.
Hello, councilors. For the record, I'm T. Michael Thomas, the founder of the People's Academy, and her father, when I attended ORC, I made him a coffee table out of wrought iron. So I was one of his pupils. But today, I've spoken to the principal a few times, together with a few individuals. like Judge Harris, Dorothea Jones. And we have a bold plan that we can come in at the People's Academy because there's over $18 billion in construction, and the type of work that we do at the exterior, which is all over the city, it's about 4 times that's needed. And if the city would welcome and allow us to come in and partner up, we can seriously have a serious impact for the infrastructure. And nothing against colleges, it's great, colleges is great, but you always need a tradesperson, especially when there is such a need, because when you look at the new boom, like I said, there's over $18 billion in new construction, at least half of the individuals are from outside of Boston, outside of Massachusetts. So why can't we at least come in, work together, teach some of these individuals, men and women, who are interested in the building trades, that a sheet metal worker's package, after you become a journeyman, after 4 or 5 years, you're looking like about at least $80, $85 an hour. That's good benefits. That's a good hourly livable wage. So I'm hoping today that we can really sit down and have a conversation, partner up with People's Academy. Let's teach as much individuals that's interested in the building trades, get them on some of these projects, and make a gainful, employment and be productive in society, working with our homeowners and our the business community, and rebuild our infrastructure. So, councilors, it's always a pleasure seeing you, and thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Joe DePina, and then we'll have Domingo de Rosa.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe DePina, and I'm here for a lot of reasons. Because for years, I attended English high school, and it wasn't because that's where I wanted to go, right? And it was harder for me there because there wasn't no programs for me. See, I'm a hands-on person. I currently own a business called JD Floors, formerly known as Your Time of Need Floral Designs. And that's because I have a craft and an art. And as it was referred to earlier, Mr. McCaskill said, there's no exam, there's no way, the students are not being asked, do you want to go here? And as Councilor Kim Janey said earlier, it was just a dumping ground for the ones that they didn't want to put where they wanted them. It was just like, here, this is where you're going to go, and particularly a lot of Cape Verdean students, that's where we were dumped, majority of us. That became the school that all the Cape Verdeans went to. So they paid it no mind, and they watched it go down and down and down. And they continue to pay it no mind, because I strongly feel like the reason that they continue to pay it no mind and help you, Mr. McCaskill, and all of you, and thank you for coming up here and standing up, and helping you all navigate the school to where you want it to be and where we want it to be in this community. Because I strongly feel like they want that school to be taken over, and I feel like they want to hand it over to Northeastern. Okay? And if you look at what they're doing to Roxbury, particularly that part right there, you got the Boston Police Headquarters, then you got beautiful Northeastern, and now they're going to put a beautiful BJ's and things that gentrify that part of the community. So do they really want Madison there? Do they care about Votech? No. Do they care about our black and brown kids that are in there? No. Have they ever? I don't think so. Maybe at the beginning when the school first opened up, when Charles was in there, when it was Madison Park, okay? But now they continue to drag every single one of the administrative staff out of there slowly. They make them uncomfortable. The BPS continues to underfund them. and make them uncomfortable at their jobs to where they go in there and they don't have the resources to do their job, like Mr. McCaskill, to be able to navigate the school. He eventually gets overwhelmed and decides, I'm going to leave. And I hope you don't. I hope you stay there like Mr. Clark did, okay? You know, because they run everybody out. And then they watch, then the school just continues to go down. And someone else said that other kids you don't encourage the kids to sign up to go to that school. Technology has moved up. You know, automotives, you know, construction, all that stuff is there, great, right? But I see, now, I drive Uber, and, well, I was until issues happened, but we're going to fix that. But I've driven Uber for 5 years. And I have a college degree. Could I go do something else? Sure, I could. But you know what? I own my business. I do that. And then I drive Uber part-time, and it makes me good money, right? But I chose to drive Uber because you know what I hear? I watch every single Caucasian person get in my car, and they're all techies. They're all making 6 figures. They all have computer science degrees. They're all consultants. The people I drive around this city and the information that goes right into here, what I suck up. And what I notice is there's a big disparity. When the black and brown people get in my vehicle, a few of them have some of these jobs. And when I meet them, I said, how'd you do it? I'm a computer engineer. What do you do? I'm in IT. I'm in all this. And what are we offering now at this vocational high school? Do we have an up-to-date computer coding? You know, are we doing computer engineering? This is a tech school. So why are we still stuck on, let's show the kids how to fix cars? You know what? These cars are going to be fixing themselves pretty soon. Are we teaching them the technology of what these new cars are doing? Tesla, it's all computerized. Are we teaching them that? No, we're not. But rather, we're continuously watching them destroy the school so I believe, and I won't for 2 seconds think not, for them to hand it over to the state, and then the state turn around and sell it to Northeastern, like they've done with our park. What is the name of that park, Domingos? Right on Columbus Ave, where we used to go and enjoy jazz right in the heart of Roxbury. Now it's going to the seaport. So we are, and that park now is beautiful. Do you see the big white balloon over there so they can enjoy it in the winter when it's snowing, they're still hot and warmed up? So that's the direction I feel that BPS and the city and state is going with this school. And we have my brother Sam DePina here, who's in the school department. He's Cape Verdean. He knows the stories of the Cape Verdean students that went to that school. So I expect you to work just as hard to help your fellow people and continue to fight with BPS. I know some people, you know, in these positions, you can't have a voice because as soon as you voice your opinion, you're out of there. But guess what? That's why I'm here, because I have a voice and I don't care. And I will continue to stand up for our people, because every time one of you can't voice your opinion, trust me, dial 617-293-1060, because I'm going to come right here and I'm going to tell our councilwoman exactly what needs to happen. And I thank you, Anissa, Councilor Essaibi-George, and Councilor Wu, and Kim Janey, for holding this hearing. It's long overdue, and it should be packed in here with our community people. But you know what else happens? There's a lack of letting people know, okay? No one gets the information. You know how I know about this? My friend Domingos called me this afternoon, give me a ride. I'm like, where you going? Oh, I'm going to a hearing about Madison Park. I said, all right, I'm gonna come pick you up and let's go. So no one knows about these certain kind of hearings because of the way that they advertise it. They don't write letters to each home and say, hey, we're having a hearing? Do they give you enough funding for you to write your students, parents, and invite them, or does it just go when they come to the door, which a lot of your parents don't come to your door. They don't even come to the parent-teacher night. So, you know, so we need to figure out a way, Anissa, as a lot of hearings that go on in the city, we need to figure out a way to better communicate and to better advertise it.
So I'll just interrupt you and say this is our third official hearing on this matter. We had a few last year, both at the school-based and then I think another one here. And we've also had, probably discussing Madison Park in particular, we've probably, between the three of us, done about 12 different iterations of
awesome. And I know you're on top of that,
Thank
Councilor
you.
George. So I don't want to be up here too long because I can go on and on. I'm going to let my
Thank
other
you.
behalf come over here and do it.
And next we have Domingo De Rosa, and last on the list to close us out after Domingo will be Harris Hardaway. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Domingos De Rosa, class of '96, MP for life. I started in Madison. Oh, sorry. I'm also the president, newly elected president of the Madison, not president, vice president of the Madison Alumni Group. I started Madison in '92. The school has always had the lack of support. My first day in school, we were told that Wentworth was in the process of buying the school. They wanted us out. We did a walkout, the whole school. We came here to City Hall, knocked on Menino's door, right down here on the 5th floor, and had a conference with him about why the school needs to stay open and why the school needs to be properly funded and why the school needs to be the gem that it is. It's 2019, and I stand in front of you on the 5th floor again, here to speak on a school that has been neglected by the city for many years. 60 part-time substitute teachers, no headmaster, students with no schedules. To me, that sounds like you was already planning for the school to be a turnaround school when you don't have a plan for students on day one. I graduated in '96 with the dream of going to college. Didn't know when I was going to go, but I had individuals, now I can call them Carlos, right? I can get that. And individuals like him always told us, the skills you learn today are going to make you who you are tomorrow. And they didn't lie. A lot of the teachers didn't lie. Mr. Pottinger, Mr. Lack, Mr. Johnson. I mean, I can go on and on of different teachers who invested their time into the students because they cared about us. Somehow, some way, the upper administration neglected to do their part. To my understanding, students now lack prom, yearbooks. I played 3 sports at Madison: football, hockey. Yep, I was one of the only black kids that played hockey in Boston, still play it. And baseball. We have no football team. A school of 900 students, and we're not able to get 30 students to play football due to grades, due to lack of support, due to lack of interest, because of the way that the student body community exists in the school. Some of those students do not want to be there. They're forced to go to a building that they have no interest of being in. Myself and thousands of alumni. Madison has the biggest body of alumni of students in Boston. From a school that had 2,300 plus at the beginning of its opening, down to 800 students now, years later, we still have the highest numbers of alumni. And when we sit and we talk and we wonder why the school is still in the same position, it goes back to administration. And we're not talking about the school administrators. We're talking the folks who are running BPS, the folks who are sitting at these budget hearings, the folks who are putting the budgets together to speak about how to make this school better. We got one football coach, and everyone else is volunteering. We have no workout facility because someone else is using that space. We have a music department. We got Berkeley down the street, but no one gets a chance to go there. I graduated from Franklin Institute, and the funny thing is Dr. Fields was my headmaster, and then he was my dean in college. So the folks who live in Boston and who wants to see this school turn around are just tired of hearing the same story. I graduated in 96, 20-something years ago. I sit here and it's the same hamster wheel. I went to school with some of the roughest kids in the city. I learned how to fix a S500 that had 32 processors in a vehicle. I learned how to build a model house from scratch in carpentry. I learned how to weld, that I still weld today, and teach my children some of the skills that I learned at Madison. So to sit here and see this proposal and budget on the screen that we barely can see, and hear that there's $20 million going into Madison, but the school is shrinking. The student body is shrinking. The school itself is physically shrinking. We have a brand new development getting ready to be groundbreaking behind the school called Rocks Crossing, and none of that money seems to trickle down to the school. So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to everyone speak their piece, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, being that 15-year-old freshman at Madison, I wanted to go there because I wanted to fix cars. I wanted to learn a trade. And I tell myself the same thing some of these folks are saying. Why? Is it because they're black and brown students? I had one Caucasian kid in my graduating class, one. What is the percentage now of students who are not from Roxbury and Dorchester or Mattapan or Hyde Park? Is that the reason why the city doesn't really pay so much attention to what is going on at Madison? Is it because the kids that are going to Madison are going to wind up in the prison, school-to-prison pipeline? Or is it because there's a bigger picture? Same thing they did with some other properties around the city. There's no reason why we should be here today speaking about a school that should already be. We fought to get the school accredited in '92. And we're still fighting today to get the school accredited, and more staff and more support. It's frustrating as a citizen, as a graduate, as a community member, that we still speak about a school that is the only voc tech in the region. We don't have one in Quincy, there's not one in Somerville, there's not one in Weymouth, there's not one in Dedham, which these towns will love to have this school. They will come in here and give it every single piece of support they can give. So, in saying all this, I hope that this is not going to be the last. I hope that the city will do more to bring in more individuals who have ideas of how to make the school better. Because all of this is a questionnaire. My son goes to school in Concord. I got a questionnaire in 6th grade about what he wants to do when he's a freshman in high school, and where does he want to go, and what is his mindset about his future. That's all it is a questionnaire that a guidance counselor can give or a teacher can give in the 6th grade, and you can find out if this child likes to code. My daughter does that, and she's in the 3rd grade. So it's disheartening to see a city that has all these resources take its only VOTech. Brighton was a VOTech. They got rid of that years ago, right? The only VOTech in Boston. And it's a turnaround school. It had no teachers. 60-plus teachers were missing from their faculty list. No headmasters. Folks were quitting as the year was progressing. This should have been handled not 2 years ago and not 7 years ago, back in '92. When we sat here and we told Menino and his staff why the school needs the different support systems. There's no reason that we're still here looking to turn this school around. There are over 30 different trades at Madison. Boston is a booming development city. Not one union seems to be partnering up with the school. I don't see any of the outside businesses coming in and bringing more than just an opportunity. It needs to be a long-term investment. We need folks to actually take this serious, because at the end of the day, these young individuals that we're not servicing are going to be the individuals who are committing a lot of the crimes within our city. And when they do become those type of individuals, the reason why they are is because we let them down when they were students. Thank you.
Thank you. And then last for public testimony is Harris Hardaway.
Good evening, counselors. My name is Harris Hardaway. I'm here representing Suburban Home Healthcare. I just want to thank you for having this hearing. We were aware of some of the other ones that you had, the hearings, but we heard about them a little late, but we didn't want to miss today. I just want to also thank Counselor Janey, because she opened her doors to us, and we had told her we wanted to partner with Madison. And so we're thankful for that. And a very big thank you to Mr. McCaskill, who've been working with over the past couple of years. As soon as he heard that we wanted to partner with the school, he put us in touch with his great staff, including Nurse Opal Hines and Brandy Cruther. So the reason I'm here is because we do want to be a partner. And through our conversations, we haven't been able to move as quickly because of funding. And it's sad that we, as one of the largest home health care agencies across the state, one of the oldest since the state and the federal government started doing maternity and helping families in the home, that we have to sit here today and find that there isn't enough funding for the health sciences that we need. There is currently a crisis with nursing, not only nursing, but certified nursing assistants, PT, and many of the other tracks that go into the health sciences. Certified nursing assistants and home health aides is the beginning step in your entry into the health science field and to health care. And right now, we have thousands of elders in this city right now, along with those living with disabilities and those that are challenged, that cannot get the quality care that they need. And so sometimes we have a lot of people that talk. And so instead of just spitting out words, we want to be a solution to the problem. We are an employer who would like to employ students from Madison Park Vocational High School. And the problem is that there aren't enough of them. And that's because the students are not encouraged to go there. We have the state who put in $1 billion or over $1 billion into the universities for the health sciences, bio and all of that. But we don't have the same commitment from not only the city, but also from the rest of the businesses that are across the city and the state who will hire these students. And hopefully, they will become nurses and doctors. I am lucky that I have a doctor in the family, my brother, but he did not start at Madison. He, too, like myself, is a graduate of Boston Latin School. So I'm very proud to be a graduate of the public school system. But going to Latin school, being the first public school in the entire nation, 1635, it taught us why we are first, summus primi. But it also taught us why Boston should always be first in education. And it doesn't mean just Boston Latin School, it means all of our education centers and all of the support should be to our educators. So, excuse me. So we encourage the City Council and for the mayor to support Mr. McCaskill and his staff because we're in dire need. We have spoken about scholarships, we've spoken about support for staff, and our CEO, Michael Roper, is actually a graduate of some vocational programs in New Hampshire. And because of that, how it saved his educational career, he is very adamant about being a partner for Madison. We have seen the news and how Worcester Vocational has made national headlines. And we wonder why we can't be a partner for the school in our very own backyard. It is a magnificent center. We had the opportunity to tour it. We saw the great work that the educators in the building have been leaders with new programming and some of the investment that has happened, so we're very thankful for that. What we do need is more investment in the health sciences. We need students to want to care about caring for others. 80% of the health care that goes to people who leave hospitals comes from the families and those who are the secondary caretakers like CNAs, home health aides, and the physical therapy assistants. So please, put your funding, put your support, put your voice behind these hardworking people, behind these professionals who do nothing but teach and make career-focused students. I'll say this, I'm also an owner of a business, a co-owner with my family in Dudley Square, and Madison is a part of Dudley Square. And so I'm also the vice president of the Dudley Square Main Streets Board. It is so important that we see this school be successful and all the other institutions, the new STEM school, O'Brien, and the other ones that are in the area because they become our future business leaders. They are the ones who invest their time, their money, and really continue the culture of that epicenter of the city. I had the opportunity to meet one of your students who came into my boutique in the bowling building and was looking to buy an outfit. And the maturity of this young woman, I thought she was in college. And I just kept talking to her. I said, oh, so what are you doing? Oh, I just got off of work. I said, you're working? Well, how old are you? Oh, I'm 17. I said, shouldn't you be in high school? She said, I am. I go to Madison. And it's our day to go to one of our co-ops, or they get to work at a different facility. And I said, well, what program are you in? She said, I'm going to be a CNA. And I said, well, that's interesting. I've got a client that might want to hire you. And she said, oh, well, that's great. I said, well, why do you want to be in this? And she said, because I love caring for people. And I've seen some of the other students, and they've gone through the other tracks, but this is the one I wanted to be in. And I'm happy. And I'm ready to work. And when I'm done at high school, I'm going to continue, and I'm going to become a nurse. I was overjoyed, because that's exactly what we need. And we don't have enough. When I tell you a crisis, it's not just here in Boston, it's across the country, and people are dying at home. They are being readmitted to the hospital because they don't have the right caretakers. And we all know readmittance costs a lot more money than funding Madison Park High School. So we encourage you to really put the support behind that's needed, because the students, I echo the sentiments, they're never a problem, Our kids are never a problem. Our teachers are doing the hardest job they can with what they have. But we are here to partner. We want that to go on record. And we want you to tell us how we can do that. Because we don't have the funding to fund everything. We can do some things, what little we can, but you tell us in the community how we can support you in doing what a great job you're doing and having this hearing, and I hope you all get the funding you need.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here and staying. Just a few notes of thanks. Michelle, David, Sam, Shara, thank you very much for being here. Mr. McCaskill, thank you. I also know that Ms. Dickens is in the audience, so I just want to thank her for being here, principal of Madison Park. A special thanks to the teachers and other folks from Madison Park that came. You've been really great, and I just want to thank you for being here and being supportive of your school community. The love that you've shown for this process today, no doubt, reassures me of the love you show every day for your kids in your classrooms. I look forward to what's ahead for us. As I mentioned, we've had a number of hearings and other sort of pieces of this work. I think with the conversation from Councilor Wu and Mr. DePina about what could happen maybe in the next month, I think that gives us a good timeline to circle back, perhaps take what we're going to learn through the budget process that's coming up in the next few weeks, and over the next, or in about a month's time or so, figure out the best way to reconvene, whether in a working session or another format. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Have a good evening.